This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate first part of What If Naruto was saved by Hagoromo after Sasuke Retrieval arc. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
A man observed the conclusion of Naruto and Sasuke's battle. He had a gray beard and long, spiky gray hair that fell down his back. He had just opened his eyes. At the very end, the man saw that the boy with the blonde hair had purposefully missed. Abruptly, the rain started to fall in torrents. The man thought to himself, very interesting. I wonder if the boy is still alive. The enigmatic man descended to the boy with the blonde hair. He discovered him to be very weak but alive. After taking Naruto in his arms, he began to ascend the cliff's side. The mysterious man vanished into the forest with Naruto, saying, "Perhaps you'll be the one I've been looking for all these years." Kakashi arrived at the Valley of the End's edge to witness the devastation. He looked around, but neither Naruto nor Sasuke were there. Pakun gave a headshake. There is the scent of blood scattered all around the valley. It smells like most of it is Naruto's. It's rather hard to tell. The rain's washing the scent away too fast. Kakashi looked downstream, unwilling to accept the worst. Do you think Sasuke killed him? And he asked. I'm sorry to say, that's probably what happened. I don't want to think he's dead either, but I have nothing for you that says otherwise. Pakun noticed a mask on his forehead. It's Sasuke's. I'm sorry, Kakashi, but I think we may have to report Naruto as Kia. The scent of Naruto's blood is all over this. Kakashi let out a sigh. He sincerely hoped that he would not have to submit this report to the Hokage. He was aware that the news would greatly distress Tsunade. Gathering Sasuke's forehead protector, Kakashi shoved it into his vest. Let's go, Pakun. I might as well get this over with. I'm sorry, Kakashi. After leaving the valley, the two made their way back to the village. After a while of making their way through the trees, Kakashi and Pakun came upon the dispatched medical unit. The medic inquired, what is the status of Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki? Sasuke Uchiha is gone. Naruto Uzumaki most likely killed in action, Kakashi said in a tone that was almost lifeless. The medic didn't elaborate on the situation. The other genin are alive, but a few of them are in critical condition. All of them are expected to survive and make full recoveries. Kakashi said, that's good, and then he moved ahead of the medic. Right now, he really didn't want to speak to anyone. But he arrived at the village's front gates far too quickly. Tsunade was standing there, he noticed. Kakashi was aware that this news would not sit well with her. Where's Naruto? Kakashi. Tsunade didn't seem to be concerned about Sasuke at the moment. I'm afraid I was too late, Tsunade. Sasuke has escaped. I found his forehead protector on the ground. I have it here with me. I don't care about Sasuke right now, Kakashi. Where is Naruto? When I arrived at the Valley of the End, there was no sign of Naruto Uzumaki, only the smell of his blood all around the valley. Tsunade's gaze expanded. Her Anbu materialized behind her when she gestured for him. Gather all off. Duty Anbu and head to the Valley of the End and search for any signs of Naruto Uzumaki. Hi. The Anbu vanished in a leaf whirl. Somewhere in the land of fire, 2 weeks later. When Naruto woke up, he discovered that he was somewhere he had never been. There was no doubt that he was no longer at the Valley of the End. A sharp pain stabbed through his body as he attempted to sit up, and he collapsed back onto the bed. Where am I? As he glanced around the room, he thought. He noticed he wasn't in a medical facility. It appeared to be someone's bedroom. When Naruto realized he had failed in his attempt to bring Sasuke back, he let out a sigh. Oh, so you're awake already. I figured you'd still be out for a few more days at least, with injuries that serious. Naruto turned to watch an elderly man enter the room. The elderly man had long, spiky gray hair and a medium-length gray beard. This was a man he had never seen in his life. However, Naruto noticed that the elderly man's eyes were closed. Where am I? The last thing I remember was fighting, and then everything went black. The man stroked his beard and remarked, yes, it was quite the interesting fight you had with that other boy. Why am I here? Better yet, where am I? You are currently in my home. I was intrigued by your actions, so I brought you with me. Why would you intentionally miss that other boy, and only scratch his forehead protector? Naruto attempted, but was unsuccessful, to sit up. The elderly man helped Naruto up after noticing that he was having a lot of difficulties. Why should I tell you? Naruto inquired, wary of the elderly man in front of him. Then he became aware of a slight lightness in his head. Naruto touched the spot where his forehead protector had been and asked, where's my forehead protector? I'm just a simple old man who lives alone in this house. The least you could do is humor me by answering my rather simple question. And your forehead protector fell into the river. The feeling Naruto had was a total fabrication. At least he was a straightforward elderly man. With a sigh, Naruto chose to respond to the elderly man's query. Sasuke was my friend. You could say he was my best friend. Sure, neither of us got along at all, but we had a mutual understanding. Well, at least I thought we did. When it came time to make the decision, I just couldn't go through with it. Interesting. However, why would you not try to kill him when he was most certainly trying to kill you? I promised someone I would bring him back to the village. So you're a man of your word then? I always keep my promises, no matter what. Although, I guess I broke this one by not bringing him back to the village. No, not broken. Not yet, at least. The boy you fought is still out there. You can still keep your promise. The boy you fought, in the end, had the chance to kill you before he left, but did not. There is still the chance he can be saved and be brought back as the friend you knew. However, you will need to become much stronger than you are now to accomplish this, as I suspect the next time you two meet, he will be much stronger. How? How can I become stronger? Grinning, the elderly man got to his feet. The elderly man approached the door and said, "We will talk about that topic later, after you have had some more time to rest and reflect." But when his hand hit the door, he stopped. "What is your name, young one?" "Naruto." "Naruto Uzumaki. What's your name, old man?" The elderly man left the room, shutting the door, giving Naruto time to rest. "You will find out soon enough. But now is not that time. For now just call me old man." Naruto lowered himself back onto the bed until he was lying down. Behind his cage, the Kyuubi appeared to be growling. Was this a good man, then? Although Naruto was genuinely unaware, he thought the elderly man was a decent man. The elderly man captivated Naruto as well because he appeared to have vision without opening his eyes. In the village of the leaf, Tsunade was examining a sheet of paper while seated at her desk. She just needed to sign the piece of paper. The paper she was holding was a form with Naruto's information on it. One section listed his present health status. Kia was checked off that section. Before Jiraiya gave her some information, Tsunade had been extremely hesitant to sign the form. Jiraiya had previously informed Tsunade that Naruto's name had been removed from the list of active summoners. She was aware that this indicated Naruto was either dead or concealed by a barrier that made it impossible to track him from the outside. There were not many barriers like that, and she was not aware of any in particular. With a sigh, Tsunade signed her name on the paper. Naruto's friends would be the ones most affected by this. She opened the door to her office. When Tsunade looked up, she saw that Naruto's friends, or at least those who were healthy enough to leave the hospital, had entered. None of them had heard from her yet. They most likely wanted news because they were impatient. They were all waiting for Tsunade to speak. Tsunade took out Naruto's forehead protector and placed it on her desk, saying, "I'm sorry, but I don't have any good news for you. That's it. That's all that's been recovered." Tsunade couldn't mince words. Really, there was no reason to. They would eventually lose friends because they were ninja. That was the way it was. Glancing across the Hokage's desk, Shikamaru noticed the form bearing Naruto's name. A little extreme to classify him as Kia, don't you think? Hinata's eyes widened and her breathing became a little labored as she asked, "Naruto. Kun's dead?" Tenten tried to comfort her by giving her a pat on the back. "To tell you the truth, I don't know. I never personally consider someone dead until I see a body. But everything that has been brought to my attention leads to the belief that Naruto has passed on. I hope you have more than just his headband to go on, Hokage." "Sama," Shikamaru said. Tsunade let out a sigh. She expected this to occur eventually. "You've all seen a summoning contract scroll before, at least in a picture, correct?" Everyone gave a nod. "Well, a summoning contract scroll has the ability to know when a user has passed on. The fact is, Jiraiya came to me yesterday, telling me that the Toad Scroll has marked Naruto off, meaning he is no longer among the living." Shikamaru questioned, "Isn't there a way to fool that part of the scroll?" Tsunade gave a nod. "Yes, multiple ways, none of which Naruto could possibly know. There are very few people alive that could teach or perform said technique on Naruto. The only one I know of is Jiraiya." Tsunade exhaled. Tsunade was nearly certain that Naruto was dead, but as she stated, if a body wasn't discovered, there was always a chance. The chances of Naruto being alive, knowing this, are slim to none. But if he is alive, I want him to return of his own free will, not because I had him hunted down by Anbu. Telling his friend that would also give them a glimmer of hope that he was still alive. Reflecting on Tsunade's statement, Shino questioned, so marking him off as Kia does that if he is indeed still alive. Tsunade turned to Sakura, who had a lifeless expression in her eyes, and said, as I mentioned before, the chances of Naruto being alive are very small, and, again, I never consider someone dead until I see a body, which we haven't found. Sakura appeared to be more affected by the news than anyone else in the room. But judging by the expression in Hinata's eyes, she wasn't far behind. Ino, could you take Sakura home? I think she needs a little more time to process all this. Ino gave a nod. Sakura did not respond to the statement, come on, Sakura. Let's get you home. She simply followed Ino's instructions and left the room. She had been deeply affected by the news. Tenten glanced at the cousin of her teammate. Hinata appeared disoriented and unsure of her next move. She prompted Hinata to look up and asked, when will the funeral be held? Tsunade avoided eye contact as she studied her papers. The funeral will be held in a few days, when the others will at least be well enough to be allowed out of the hospital for a short time. Now, if you three would leave, I'd like to be alone for a little while. After giving a nod, Shino, Tenten, and Shikamaru departed the room with Hinata. Tsunade decided it was time to confront the person who had been listening in on the conversation after they had left. Come out, Gaara. I know you're there. Gaara materialized in a sand swirl in front of Tsunade's desk. He merely nodded and asked, I take it you heard everything? Will you be staying for the funeral? Since the funeral would be a few days away and it would take him an additional 3 days to return to Suna, Gaara said, yes, I'll be staying for the funeral. Suna won't fall apart in just 1 more week. Naruto really changed you, didn't he, Gaara? Gaara walked to the front door of Tsunade's office and said, Naruto Uzumaki showed me that there was still light at the end of the tunnel for me. The least I can do is pay my respects at his funeral. He was about to walk away when he spoke again. If any Suna ninja finds one Sasuke Uchiha, he will be dispatched with extreme prejudice. His Keke Genkai will be incinerated, and his body left to rot. Gaara opened the door and walked away. Well, Shino, Hinata, and Tenten had just left Shikamaru. Tenten said she could manage this on her own when he asked if she needed assistance with Hinata. Shikamaru never would have imagined that Naruto would pass away. He had defeated Neji and Gaara of the desert. The way Sasuke had killed and beaten him simply did not add up. He was aware that the Hokage had mentioned his survival. However, he and the other Naruto's friends at least had some hope that he was still alive because he knew that was only something she had said. Shikamaru looked at Temari and said, Yo lazy, she said, wow, you look like the world just crashed down around you, after catching a glimpse of his worn-out outlooks. Do I really look that miserable? Temari thought, yeah, you look like hell. Temari pulled him by his vest as she passed and said, come on. Let's get something to eat. Shikamaru made no objections. He simply let Suna Kunoichi, who was pretty hot, drag him around. At least Ino and Tenten were reaching Sakura and Hinata, Shikamaru hoped. Well, Tenten said, come on, Hinata. At least take a bite out of it. Hinata was prodding a cinnamon bun with a fork while gazing at it. What would Naruto want you to do? She said, I don't know, and started talking. A few tears fell on the cinnamon bun in front of her as she said, I just don't know what to do right now. I mean, well, I'm not sure what I mean. Hinata, do you really think Naruto would die that easily? Tenten responded. Tenten drank some of her tea and said, I mean he beat both Neji and Gaara in the same day. I'm pretty sure Naruto can survive 1 round with Sasuke. Tenten was pretending that everything would be fine for Hinata. I mean, really, Naruto is far too stubborn to die before he becomes Hokage. At least that's what he kept saying he was going to do. Even though she didn't really believe it either, she had to take some action to improve Hinata's attitude, even if only slightly. Hinata's face broke into a tiny smile. Tenten was correct. Simply put, Naruto was too obstinate to pass away. Most likely, he was simply training somewhere and would return home at some point. That's what she wanted to think, anyway. You're right. Of course I am. Tenten is always right, she exclaimed, using the third person to address herself. Now eat your cinnamon bun. I didn't buy it for you just so you could waste it. Tenten bought Hinata a treat, which she began to eat. Hinata was still filled with dread, but Tenten's words had at least temporarily lifted her spirits. Well, Sakura's home had just been reached by Ino and Sakura. Ino said, look, Sakura, we're at your house, hoping to elicit a response. Sakura gave Ino a little, but not very, reaction. With a sigh, Ino rapped on the door. Sakura had been extremely anxious ever since Naruto and Sasuke failed to return. Sakura just lost it now that Naruto has been officially designated as Kia. Ino wished for her friend's recovery. Sakura told her mother everything that had transpired as soon as the door opened and Ino saw her. Sakura's mother bent down to give her daughter a hug. "Thank you, Ino, for bringing her home." "Of course. I'll be by later today and tomorrow to check on her." "Thank you, Ino." With a nod, Ino left. She pondered what life would be like in the village without Naruto. When necessary, he would lighten the mood by acting foolish or by constantly going overboard with his training, but he did bring a good deal of excitement. Without him, this place would seem much more boring. Well, Tsunade carried the document she had previously signed as she moved through the corridors. A council meeting had been called by her. This was not at all what Tsunade had anticipated. She entered the council chambers through the doors. Danzo questioned, "Why have you called a council meeting, Tsunade?" Disregarding his query, Tsunade started talking. The room fell silent as the speaker declared, "I have officially marked Naruto Uzumaki off as killed in action." Danzo sneered, "Why would any of us care? Because he will be honored as a hero of the village. I just thought you would all like to know that." "That demon brat, a hero? Never," exclaimed a member of the civilian council. His head slammed back against his chair abruptly. Tsunade questioned, "Did I say it was up for debate?" A pebble had been flicked at the man's head by Tsunade. "I told you all as a courtesy, nothing more. If you don't like it, you can take a flying leap off a mountain or something. Now, if you will excuse me, I have other things to attend to." Tsunade walked away without saying a word. After leaving the Hokage's building, Tsunade left. In fact, she had nothing else planned for today. Tsunade appeared to be wandering around the village. But when she found herself in front of her former teammate's house, she stopped. She approached the door with a sigh. She waited after knocking twice. After a few seconds, the door opened. Unaware of the reason, she simply embraced Jiraiya and broke down in tears. Jiraiya wrapped Tsunade in his arms and embraced her. He truly had no idea what else to say to her, so he just said, "I'm sorry." Without intending to be harsh or anything, Jiraiya said, "Come on inside, Tsunade. I'm sure you don't want everyone to see you bawling your eyes out." She wouldn't want to be seen like this in public, he knew that. After guiding her inside, Jiraiya shut the door. Well, with her head buried in her knees, Hinata sat in front of the pond in the Hyuga estate. She had returned home after eating with Tenten. Hinata felt a little better after Tenten's words, but not much. She simply sat looking at her reflection in front of the pond. At the moment, Hinata had no idea what else to do. "You know, I came here quite often when your mother passed away." Hinata kept staring at the water without even looking around. She asked in a neutral tone, "Does it ever get any better?" Considering how frequently he used to visit, Heishi reflected, "Unless you try to shut off your own emotions like many do, it won't. No, even then, the pain of loss will never dissipate completely." Heishi walked over to some of the flowering plants his wife had planted many years ago and said, "I don't come here as often as I once did, but there are nights when I'll sit here for hours. I'll do absolutely nothing but sit here and stare at the moon on those nights. I knew you had a crush on Naruto Uzumaki." She questioned, "Was it that obvious?" "Indeed, it was. You wear your emotions on your sleeves, as they say. Your feelings for the boy were quite obvious. The only problem with you being so shy is that he would have never figured it out for himself. Naruto never knew the love of his parents, and didn't really know what love was. Unless you told him directly, he would have never known of your feelings. In that regard, you are the same as your mother. Like you, she was very shy at a young age. Why are you telling me these things?" Heishi turned and began to leave, saying, "I honestly don't know. Maybe it was seeing you there, reminding me of your mother, that brought this on." Heishi wanted to help, but he was at a loss for words. "Dinner will be ready in a few hours. At least make an attempt to come. If not, I'll send dinner to your room." Although he was capable of leading a clan, he was unable to offer his daughter any words of encouragement. He was well aware that he was a bad father. He was also certain that Izumi would know what to say if she were still living. Regardless of the circumstance, she consistently did. Heishi saw his younger daughter Hanabi as soon as he entered the mansion. Hanabi questioned, "Why is Nichan so sad? I mean, she never really talked to Naruto at all. Your sister was very fond of that boy. You could say she even loved that boy. But she never talked to him. How could she love him if she really didn't even know him?" "Love can be a very complicated thing, Hanabi. Even I don't know how to explain why she fell in love with Naruto. Maybe once you're older, you might understand." Well, beside Choji's hospital bed, Ino was seated in a chair. A red apple was being peeled by her. Although Choji adored red apples, He detested their skin. The fact that she was doing this and even remembered that he preferred his red apples peeled did not seem strange to Ino. Choji's typically upbeat tone changed to one of sorrow as he said, "So, Naruto's funeral will be in a few days." Actually, that's how all of Naruto's friends were at the moment. After peeling the apple, Ino said, "Yeah, that's what Tsunade said to us a little while ago," and started chopping it into pieces. In an attempt to shift the conversation, Ino said, "So, how much longer do they have you in here for?" "Another few weeks it seems. I guess I did quite a number on myself with those 3 pills." Whether Ino would acknowledge it or not, she was constantly concerned about Choji because he could be very careless at times. "Damn right you did. I swear you can be such an idiot sometimes. I mean, from what you used to say about those pills, I'm guessing they were never supposed to be used in rapid succession. In actuality, some would refer to that as love." In contrast, Ino referred to it as being a good friend. She was clearly denying that she had feelings for her chubby teammate. "Yeah, I know, but it's not like I had much of a choice at the time, Ino." Ino gave him the plate of apple slices that had just been cut. "You're hopeless." Choji turned to face his blonde colleague. She appeared very torn, unsure of how to express her feelings to him. At least to Choji, that's how it appeared. After a little laugh, he began to eat the apple. "Have you seen Shikamaru?" "Yeah. He was there when Tsunade told us all the news. Not sure where he is now. I'm sure he's off somewhere, staring at the clouds or something." "Well, you seriously expect me to believe that the Uchiha prick that couldn't beat my little brother killed Naruto?" replied Tamari. Tamari and Shikamaru were dining at the barbecue joint. It was suggested by Shikamaru to come here. They had just finished their meal. "Look, I don't want to believe it either, but that's what everything leads to." Tamari took a sip of her drink and said, "If you don't want to believe it, then just don't. I mean, you said they never found a body or anything. Chances are he's alive and well. That's at least what my brother is thinking right now. Now stop looking all pathetic. I hate pathetic guys." Shikamaru inquired, "So you and your brothers will be staying for the funeral?" "Yeah. I'm sure Gaara has already adjusted his plans for it." "I see. Well, I should get going. If I don't get home soon, my mom will become very troublesome." Tamari burst out laughing. "You still fear your mom?" Shikamaru rose from the table and paid for the meal, saying, "You have no idea what type of hell she can cause if you don't do as she asks. Especially when it's something as simple as coming home at a certain time." Tamari stood up and trailed after him, saying, "Now this, I gotta see." In the land of fire, somewhere Naruto slept for a few hours before waking up. Even though his body was still in excruciating pain, he was unable to remain in bed for very long. Naruto groaned as he sat up, all of his body hurting. Beside the bed, Naruto noticed a pair of crutches. He assumed they were left there for him by the elderly man. Naruto picked up the crutches and got out of bed using them. With that, Naruto left the room. He had never experienced such prolonged pain following a beating. "Damn fox is taking his sweet time healing me," he murmured. Naruto was unsure of his destination. He was fortunate that the route he followed through the house ended at a door. He discovered he was in a small village when he opened the door. If Naruto had to guess its size, it couldn't accommodate more than a few hundred people. He turned to see the elderly man with several young children, all of whom appeared to be about 5 years old. He said to them, "You want to see that trick again?" The kids all began to behave excitedly. Trees appeared out of the ground and created duplicates of each other when the elderly man clapped his hands together. The kids let out an excited cheer. The wooden copies sank back into the ground, saying, "Now you all run along. I have things I need to do today." The kids sprinted back to their houses. "I see you're up and about, Naruto. I hate sitting around in bed. I see, that's another thing I like about you." The elderly man turned around and said, "And what do you mean see? You're looking in the opposite direction." Naruto was a little irritated. "And your eyes are still closed. How exactly do you see me? Also, how did you do that? One does not need to have their eyes open to see what is before them." Well, Naruto thought, that was a little cryptic. "Well, anyhow, you still didn't answer my second question. Stay here and I will teach you how to do that and so much more." "Why should I trust you? Tell me, Naruto. What is the fox sealed inside you doing right now?" Naruto's gaze expanded. "How did you know? If you stay, I can show you how to control him and his power. Now tell me, what is the fox doing right now? Is he growling at me and cursing my existence?" "Well, now that you ask, that's exactly what he's doing. He's not using your name though." The elderly man approached Naruto and said, "Sounds like him. To that old fox, my name is probably taboo. So, child, what is your answer? Will you stay and allow me to train you, or will you leave and go back to your village? Naruto surveyed the people passing by in the tiny village he was in. Could I have a few days to think about that? The elderly man gestured for Naruto to enter his house, saying, very well. Take all the time you need. Now, come with me. You must be starving by now. As though on cue, Naruto's stomach rumbled. Naruto went inside after the elderly man. He was unsure of his choice, but if the elderly man was capable of fulfilling his claim, it would be well worth staying for. Hinata was sleeping in her bed, holding a big fox plush toy, her pale cheeks marred by tears. She and the fox plush toy were roughly the same size. She had won it at the Kyuubi festival the previous year. She was reminded of Naruto by the stuffed animal. How precisely? She had heard her father and the third Hokage discussing Naruto's condition a few years prior. She just needed to piece it together based on what they said, even though they had never stated that he held the fox out loud. After returning to her room last night, Hinata sobbed herself to sleep while holding the enormous stuffed animal. As a good Hyuga should, she mostly suppressed her emotions throughout yesterday's day. But when she returned to her room, she opened up. When someone knocked on Hinata's bedroom door, she finally opened her eyes. Nichan, it's time for breakfast. As Hinata told her younger sister, go away, Hanabi. I'm not hungry. But, I said go away, shouted Hinata. Hanabi was outside the door of Hinata's room. Before, Hinata had never screamed at her for any reason. I told you your sister would not leave her room. Hanabi's father was standing nearly directly behind her when she turned around. She yelled at me. Haishi let out a sigh. He was genuinely unsure of what to say to her. The phrase, that's the way things are, didn't sound correct. The only thing Haishi knew to do at the moment was to give Hinata space. Come, Hanabi. Breakfast is about to be served. Haishi was confident that his daughter would resolve the conflict on her own. She could handle this if she could handle the abuse she has endured from her family over the years. At least that's what he believed. Haishi and Hanabi headed for the dining room. They were about to sit down when the food was brought out. The big table was occupied by all of the elders. 3 seats were available at the head of the table. The head of the household and his daughters were to occupy those seats. In actuality, the head of the family never shared breakfast with the elders. Unless they wanted to talk to him about something significant, that is. Haishi suspected that, for the first time in a long time, he would become angry. Hanabi. Eat in the other room. It seems the elders have something to talk to me about. Yes, father, said Hanabi. Since she was aware that she had no other option, she responded without hesitation. After picking up her plate, Hanabi entered the adjacent room. Haishi took a seat at the head of the table and settled in. Haishi observed some elders eating while the majority weren't, and he asked, now, tell me, why are you all here? He could infer from that most people wanted to talk, while the others were only there out of obligation. Haishi grabbed his teacup and sipped. Before he spoke, one of the elders cleared his throat. We have come here to talk about your eldest daughter. Calmly, Haishi said, all right, what about her? The majority of us find her current state unacceptable and unfitting of an heiress of the Hyuga clan. Haishi held the teacup tighter and said nothing. We also believe her crush on the now deceased Naruto Uzumaki to be completely unacceptable. The fact that she had fallen for that cursed child means she is not suited for being a leader of this clan. Also, her timid nature. When Haishi broke the teacup in his hand, everyone in the room abruptly stopped talking or doing anything. Haishi cleaned up the mess as he carefully removed the cup fragments from himself and placed them on the table. As he did so, the elders all stood motionless and silent. Haishi gave the man who had been talking, Toshi, a scowl. The majority of you in this room that are with Toshi are a disgrace to this clan. My daughter is who she is, or more so who we made her by doing nothing but berating her for not being the best at everything. None of you will speak of her as if she is a lower creature because of it. Hiashi's tone started to get louder as he talked. My eldest daughter is not subject to your rules, but mine alone. My daughter will like who she wishes and date who she wants regardless of your opinion of them. Of course, that's as long as I approve of them. Now if you speak ill of Naruto Uzumaki again, I will inform Tsunade Senju and let her do as she pleases. He is a hero of this village, who was instrumental in our fight not long ago during the Chunin exams. Tomorrow he will be honored as such at his funeral. All of you disgrace yourselves and our clan for speaking about one who gave everything for this village and never asked for anything other than some respect in return. Also, if you refer to him as a cursed child, again, I will crush you. This will be the only warning I will be giving you. Am I understood? Heishi did not respond. Good. Now get out of my sight. Most of the elders departed. Hiashi's outburst shocked them all. His wife's death was the last time he became angry and raised his voice like that. The elders were leaving the room when a branch member entered. Heishi. Sama, Neji's teammate, Tenten, has just arrived at the compound. Very well. Have her wait in my study. I'll be there shortly. The branch member left the room after saying, as you wish. The other elders nodded, if you will excuse me. Heishi got to his feet and left the room. He noticed his youngest daughter eating in the adjacent room. As he passed Hanabi, Heishi remarked, if you want to listen in, try to do it covertly. Hanabi's face turned slightly red. She had actually been listening in. When the conversation ended, she had barely returned to her meal. Her father had seen her even before he had activated his Byakugan. Heishi hurried toward his office down the corridor. Tenten was waiting for him, he was certain. Tenten was indeed already in his office when he walked in. Heishi walked to his desk without saying anything. Now, Tenten, why exactly are you here this early in the morning? I just thought you'd like to know that Neji will be let out of the hospital soon. Excellent. He was happy that his nephew would soon be leaving the hospital. He and Choji had suffered the most from the 3 hospitalized. I take it you've told him the current state of things? I have, she said in response. Tenten was worried about Hinata because she wasn't handling things well yesterday. How's Hinata doing today? Tenten asked. Heishi spoke casually with Tenten, which was unusual for him. My eldest daughter has locked herself inside of her room. I honestly don't know what to do other than let her have the time alone. Izumi was always the one who knew what to say during times like this. When Tenten said, well, she'll come out when she's ready, I'm sure, Tenten was, of course, using that as an excuse to bring Neji food. I'll take my leave. I'm supposed to get Neji some food, seeing as the hospital food will probably kill him. Tenten then got to his feet, bowed, and left the room. With a plethora of ideas racing through his head, Heishi reclined in his chair and gazed up at the ceiling. He muttered to himself, tomorrow certainly isn't going to be any better than today. Well, at the moment, Kakashi Hitaki was going into his second bar of the day. Considering the time of day, you would think it would only be his first. But Naruto had been drinking ever since he was labeled Kia. Naruto had been drinking in moderation and utterly ignoring his responsibilities even prior to being placed on the killed in action list. But right now, he was just getting hammered to pieces. The bartender had brought Kakashi a bottle of sake, and he had just sat down. Here's to another failure, he uttered while downing half the bottle at once. The really bad bars were on the west side of Konoha, which is where Kakashi was. Naturally, he was completely unconcerned about that at the moment. Another toast to my latest batch of failures, he chuckled out loud as he finished the bottle. Kami, you look like hell. Kakashi. Kakashi saw Kurenai Yuhi standing in front of him when he looked up. He gestured to the chair and said, well, if it isn't the incredibly sexy Kurenai Yuhi. Come, sit, have a drink with me. Sorry, Kakashi, but I'm here to get you home. Kakashi asked, peering into the sake bottle to see if there was anything left to drink. Now why would you want to do that? When Kakashi realized there was nothing left to drink from the sake bottle, he threw it behind him. Instead of sending a squad after him, she offered to go, saying, because I was the one who drew the short straw and was assigned to drag your drunken ass back home. That's why. She reasoned that, unlike the last time this had happened, she could get him home without getting into a fight with him. He said, ooh, is that all? In reference to the day following the Kyuubi attack 13 years prior, when he engaged in a similar drinking binge, Kakashi said, I'm surprised they didn't send an ambush squad like last time. Yes, well, we figured if we sent one person, we could convince you to go back home without starting a fight and destroying the bar this time. Kakashi simply didn't care enough to start a fight over the whole thing. Okay, I'll go home quietly, but you have to have a drink with me first. He got into a fight with the people who attempted to bring him home the last time because he was younger and let his anger and depression control him. So, one drink and you'll go home quietly? He usually never acts like this, so it was clear that the amount of alcohol was having an effect on him at the moment. Well, you'll have to escort me of course. You know don't want me to just hit another bar on the way home and all. Kurenai let out a sigh. Fine, as long as you keep your word. Of course, it's not every day someone gets to have a drink with the Genjutsu mistress of Konoha. Kurenai sat down and signaled to the bartender to bring them each a drink by raising her hand. After swiftly finishing the alcohol, the two departed. Kakashi followed his instructions to the letter. They left the bar after just one drink. Neither of them spoke as they strolled down the street. They eventually reached Kakashi's residence. Kurenai had to assist Kakashi the rest of the way home after he tripped over himself about halfway. Kurenai assisted Kakashi into the couch as the two entered Kakashi's house. She turned away and remarked, "Well, Kakashi, I guess I'll be going now." Kakashi gently took hold of her wrist. "Would you mind staying for a little while?" asked the man. "Right now I could use the company." Kurenai gave him a look. Kakashi appeared completely pitiful. At the moment, she couldn't bring herself to refuse him. She took a seat on the couch beside him. "It's funny. Every time I try and get close to someone, they end up dying on me." "That's not true, Kakashi. What about Guy, Asuma, and Iruka?" Intoxicated, Kakashi made the decision to inform Kurenai about the people he had truly become close to. "To be honest with you, I only know them because of my profession. I don't know them as well as you think. Why do you think I always ignore Guy? Other than the fact he's just weird. I had finally gotten to like Obito, and even considered him my friend. About an hour after that, he died. Rin, my other teammate, I had finally opened up to and asked out on a date. We were supposed to have it after she came back from her mission. Well, she came back, just in a body bag, my sensei as well." Kakashi reflected on that for a moment. "Well, he didn't die right after I got close to him, and I considered him a friend and father figure, but he died all the same. Even his son. I tried to not get close to Naruto in the beginning, but after the Chunin exams, I made an attempt and his teammate decides to kill him. Sasuke probably killed him with the jutsu I taught him." Kakashi reflected on what he had just said regarding Sasuke at that moment. Is that some kind of irony? Kurenai was so focused on Kakashi's remarks regarding Naruto's parentage that she simply forgot everything he had said. "Wait, Naruto is..." Kakashi started to sway until he fell to the side, his head resting on Kurenai's lap. "Yep. Naruto Namikaze. Do keep that to yourself until tomorrow. You know, Kurenai, I had always wanted to get to know you better, but like I said, everyone I get to know well tends to die. I'm just a cursed individual, that's all." Kurenai glanced down at Junin, who was unconscious. She assumed that the alcohol had finally set in. Kakashi made Kurenai feel sorry for him. She did. He had experienced a great deal in his life. This was the first time she had ever seen him like this. Kakashi was one of the best to her and the other villagers. Most people believed that he was strong and unflappable. But that was definitely not the case at the moment. Right now, Kakashi's humanity was really coming through. Kurenai reasoned, I suppose it wouldn't hurt to stay until he sobers up. Kurenai combed Kakashi's spiky hair with her fingers. Well, Shikamaru and his father were seated at the table. Silently, the two ate. At the insistence of Shikamaru's mother, Tamari had spent the night at the Nara estate. The two of them clicked immediately. It was frightening how similar they were. Shikamaru and his father were undoubtedly alarmed. Shikaku set down his fork. I admit, she's quite the looker, son. However, couldn't you have at least found someone that didn't act exactly like your mother? What are you talking about? She just followed me home. We aren't going out. Not to mention, she's way more trouble than she's worth and she's just as bossy as mom, Shikamaru replied with a frustrated voice. He says that now, but it begins just like that. We Nara males have to fall for the bossy ones every time. Since we're too lazy to cook, we'd most likely starve to death if we didn't, Shikaku reflected. He was aware that dating a ninja from a different country would be a little challenging because in the past, it has only ever ended badly for people. Probably at Shikamaru's expense, Tamari and Yoshino entered the room laughing about something. Tamari sat beside Shikamaru at the table, and Yoshino sat beside her husband. Having fun, are we? Shikamaru inquired as he sipped his tea. According to her, you have no idea, you were a really cute kid. Shikamaru gave his mother a fierce look. Don't give me that look, Shikamaru. You could have actually made the attempt to stop me from showing her. What did you think all the laughing was about? Embarrassing childhood stories, suggested Tamari. Shikamaru muttered, I'm in hell, it's official. Alongside Naruto at last, Naruto had awakened. I wonder what time it is. It's noon, the elderly man said, coming up directly next to the bed. Naruto leapt from the bed and stood up. A few seconds later, he doubled over in agony. Naruto roared, what the hell is wrong with you, old man? And got back to his feet. Well, last time I checked, I didn't find anything, he responded. The elderly man turned and left the room, saying, anyway, come, it's time to eat. Naruto walked out of the room, complaining. Naruto entered the old man's home and saw a woman who appeared to be in her early 20s sitting at the table with him. Damn old man, scaring me when I'm still half asleep. Naruto said. Her eyes were the same shade of dark green as her long, dark green hair. She had a striking appearance. I thought you lived alone, old man, Naruto said, wiping the sleep from his eyes. Oh, I do, it's just Asami here comes by from time to keep me company. Naruto took a seat at the table and sighed. So, old man, you ever going to open your eyes or tell me who you are? All things come to those who wait, Naruto. I'll take that as a no. Naruto sighed once more before consuming the food that was placed before him. Returning to Konoha, Sakura and Ino strolled down the street. Shoji had been given the all clear to depart for a few hours, so the two were walking to the hospital to pick him up. Ino turned to face her friend. Sakura had done a total 180-degree turnaround from yesterday. Instead of being totally unresponsive as she had been yesterday, Sakura appeared to be a fully functional individual. Ino knew it was unhealthy to pull two extremes like that in 24 hours, for want of a better term. She was aware that until Inoichi cleared her, Sakura would be placed under watch and removed from active duty. Sakura would likely be off active duty for at least 6 months in light of all of that. Shoji was waiting in a wheelchair when they got to the hospital's front entrance. It's likely that the doctors didn't want Shoji to walk just yet. Shoji appeared rather thin, Ino had to admit, most likely as a result of not being able to eat as much as he desired. In addition, hospital food was not very good. Without a word, Ino entered the hospital, positioned himself behind Shoji's wheelchair, and pushed it. Ino, I can do this myself. Ino reprimanded, shut up and just let me. At the moment, Ino felt pretty worthless. Recent events made her feel as though she was incapable of doing anything correctly. So where do you guys want to eat lunch? I want barbecue, said Shoji. Naturally, Ino knew he was going to say that. That sounds good, said Sakura. Shoji was aware of Sakura's reaction from yesterday. He asked an implicit question as he turned to face Ino. Ino shook her head, understanding what he was asking. Is Sakura okay? Was the silent query. Naturally, Ino responded by shaking her head and saying, no, indicating that she wasn't feeling well. Shoji was gradually pushed to their destination by Ino. By the time they reached the barbecue restaurant, nearly 30 minutes had passed. When they entered, they saw Temari and Shikamaru sitting at a table with the sand kunoichi. Shikamaru saw Shoji, Sakura, and Ino approaching the table. Shikamaru said, hey, Shoji, how are you feeling? Hungry, he said plainly. He remarked, well, you do look pretty thin, observing his friend's extreme thinness. While she and Sakura took seats across the booth from Temari and Shikamaru, Ino dragged Shoji to the side of the table. Ino questioned, so, what's she doing here? Shikamaru said, she won't stop following me, with a sour tone. I've got nothing better to do right now than annoy your lazy ass, she replied. Not to mention, you probably like the attention from someone like myself. Shikamaru complained angrily. During his home breakfast this morning, he was a verbal punching bag. Ino inquired, so, where's Hinata? Temari and I ran into Tenten a little earlier. She told us Hinata had locked herself in her room, but that was this morning. To which Ino replied, oh, I see. Well, when Neji finally made the decision to leave her room, Hinata sat in her hospital room. Tenten had departed just before her arrival. Since Hinata's arrival, the two cousins had not spoken to each other. Neji turned to face Hinata, who appeared completely disoriented. Neji's statement caught Hinata's attention. Do you really think he's dead, Hinata? She asked. Naruto beat both myself and Gaara in the same day. Do you really think Sasuke, of all people, could have killed him when Gaara and I couldn't? Neji's voice was dead serious. His mind was unable to comprehend how Sasuke could have killed Naruto, so he thought he was still alive. Tell me, Hinata. Hinata was unable to look him in the eye. She simply gazed at the ground. I don't know. If you don't know, then just don't believe he's dead. Just believe he will come back someday once he's ready. But Tsunade said. Neji sighed. She said they couldn't find a body. Hinata, you told me once you believed in Naruto. Just believe in him now. Neji's eyes met Hinata's. They showed no hesitancy to her. In fact, he thought Naruto was still alive. She muttered, I want to think that Naruto is still alive. Then, believe it, as Naruto would say. Hinata gave a small smile. She was thankful for Neji's words, but she wasn't sure if he was correct. She really wanted to think Naruto was still alive. Tenten entered the hospital room with a late lunch for herself and Neji as the door opened. Unaware that Hinata was present, she moved over and placed the food on the table. Tenten turned to see Hinata in the room for the first time. Oh, Hinata. I didn't realize you were here. I thought you were still locked in your room. Feeling better now, I take it? She said, yes, thank you. Tenten gave Hinata and Neji some food and said, well, you might as well eat with us. I brought more than enough for 3 people. Tenten brought a lunch, which the 3 of them ate in silence. Well, Tsunade had only just entered her office. She spent last night at Jiraiya's place and saw that Shizune was gracious enough to take care of things until she got there today. To be honest, Tsunade was shocked that he hadn't attempted to exploit her the previous evening. Jiraiya, incidentally, was sitting on one of the many window sills in the Hokage's office at the moment, simply gazing out over the village. He really did look miserable at the moment. Well, they were both pretty miserable. Tsunade glanced at the timepiece. 2 o'clock in the afternoon had arrived. Tsunade got out of the chair and moved to the window where Jiraiya was standing. When Jiraiya finally said, it seems it's rather mixed on how well Naruto's friends are taking this all. Yeah, some are of the opinion he's still alive, while some are sure he's dead, and the rest just don't know what to think. I'm sure Sakura thinks Naruto's dead, from her reaction yesterday. I think Hinata's on the fence about what she believes. I doubt either Neji or Gaara think he's dead. The others, I'm not really all that sure about. At that point, they saw many of Naruto's companions walking along the sidewalk. Sakura's condition caught Tsunade's attention. It seems Sakura pulled a 180 from yesterday. Well, right now, she doesn't have a team, so you can have her see Inoichi until he clears her for active duty, Jiraiya replied. Not to mention, you should train her, Hinata, and Ino to be medics. I mean, that would probably be the wisest course of action right now. Tsunade sighed as she took a seat beside Jiraiya. You're probably right. Without warning, Jiraiya uttered, he was so young. Then he pulled her in by putting his arm around her waist. Tsunade had stated that she didn't think anyone was dead until she saw a body, and she added, I know. Far younger than both his parents. But only for the benefit of Naruto's companions. She was a veteran, as was Jiraiya. It was much simpler for them to accept that someone had passed away because they had lost more friends than they could count over the years. Now, it wasn't any easier for them to handle just because they had experienced it so frequently. In total silence, the two sat there. Well, Shino and Kiba were strolling along the road. The village was in a rather gloomy mood at the moment. Kiba had spent the majority of the day at his clan's compound after being released from the hospital this morning. About half an hour ago, he had departed to meet Shino. Kiba inquired about his teammate, so, how was Hinata last time you saw her? Shino answered, she wasn't taking it too badly the last time I saw her. I honestly have my doubts he's dead. If the Hokage says he's dead, he's dead. I'm not going to keep myself up at night wondering, Kiba said. Kiba's remarks were a little heartless, but that's just the way he was brought up. Although it was a rather strange tactic, Kiba had actually come to like Naruto more after losing to him in the preliminary round. Given that Kiba's family valued strength and that Naruto defeated Neji in the 3rd section of the tests, Kiba simply had no chance. I'll be going now, Kiba. I need time to think about things. Yeah, same here, Shino. I'll see you whenever. Team 8's 2 members split up and went in different directions. Alongside Naruto on the front porch of the elderly man's house, Naruto sat with him. The house was higher than the other structures because it was perched on a small hill, something he had not previously noticed. The old man said abruptly, you mentioned yesterday that you had promised someone. Could you tell me who that person was? Her name was Sakura. She was on my genin team, Naruto answered. Oh, a girl, I see. Did you have feelings for this girl? I thought I did. I wasn't sure what those feelings really were. Well, I'm still not sure what those feelings were. I just know she would never love me. I finally understood that when she begged me to bring Sasuke back. I see. Naruto inquired, so, did Asami leave? She did. Asami comes around every so often to check up on me. Of course, the children of this small village come around often and ask me to do tricks. Naruto genuinely wanted to know how the elderly man accomplished that, so he said, yeah, that thing you did yesterday. He was staying because of that and other factors. Naruto was genuinely curious as to how and why. I do that and many more things. I'm sure if you stick around you'll see what those things are. So, Naruto, what will you do if you ever see Sasuke again? Naruto gazed down at the floor before him. I don't know. Right now I just don't know what I'll do. He tried to kill me, he really did. But I've never broken a promise before. Then don't. Be a man of your word to the very end. Why should I trust you, old man? After giving that some thought, the elderly man answered. Now that I think about it, I guess there is no reason you should trust me. However, if I was going to try something, I would have done it long before now. Then again, it's really up to you to decide what you wish to believe. I really don't know what to believe anymore. I suppose that's understandable. Sitting silently, the two observed the families in the tiny village going about their everyday activities. Naruto was curious about what it was like to be a family man. Since he had never actually experienced one, he had always wondered what it was like. Naruto's desire for what he was witnessing in the village ahead of them was felt by the elderly man. Let me ask you, Naruto. Is there anyone back where you live that would miss you? Naruto questioned. What do you mean? If they thought you were dead, would you be missed? It took Naruto a moment to consider that. Despite finding that question strange, Naruto responded to it. Well, I suppose there would be some people who would miss me. If you're asking, I doubt a lot of people would show up for my funeral. The elderly man got up and said, all right, let's go. With a raised eyebrow, Naruto asked, what do you mean by, let's go? Why, to see your funeral, of course, the elderly man grinned. Overlooking the village were huge, black clouds that looked almost unnatural, but that suited the village's mood at the time. The village hidden in the leaves appeared to be on the verge of a downpour from the sky. Hinata was preparing for the burial. She glanced at a few of the photos on her desk across the room. She was particularly interested in one. The three rookie teams were in the photo. Her sensei, Kurenai, had forced her to stand beside Naruto. It was clear from the photo that she was flushed. It wasn't made any easier by Kiba, who advised Naruto to make the peace sign and put his arm around Hinata. Naturally, Naruto did just that because he didn't think that was strange at all. Hinata had almost passed out from that, but she forced herself to stay conscious. Hinata examined the positions of the other people in the photo. She was standing beside Naruto. Sakura and Kakashi stood behind Naruto, while Sasuke stood on the opposite side. Team 8 and Team 10 followed. The only person missing from her team's photo was Hinata. Hinata grinned, and Naruto grinned broadly and foolishly. A knock on Hinata's door caused her to set down the photo. Her sister was standing there in her funeral attire when she approached the door and opened it. She had heard Hanabi's account of their father reprimanding the elders. But Hanabi never explained to her what Heishi had said or the topic of the conversation. Hanabi. Why are you wearing your funeral clothes? Everyone is. Said Hanabi. When Hinata peered through her room's doorway, she noticed that everyone was dressed for the funeral. She was not entirely sure what was happening. Father says you can go on ahead if you like, Hanabi said. Her response was, oh. All right. Since her father hadn't spoken to her since the other day, Hinata wasn't sure what was going on. Hinata said, well, I'll be going then, since she was expected to meet the others and go to the funeral. Neji and Tenten were waiting for Hinata when she left her sister and went down the hallway. Tenten said, ready to go, Hinata? I guess so, she said in response. They were all ill. Prepared to go to Naruto's funeral. There was that tiny part of them that believed he was dead, even if they didn't really think so. Well. At Ichiraku's, Shikamaru took a seat on one of the many stools. Beside him sat Tamari. They were both waiting for the others. Shikamaru turned his attention to the Tsunakunoichi sitting next to him. Tamari appeared a little down. Given how gloomy today had been, he couldn't hold it against her. Tucci and Ayame wore black to the funeral. They were merely tidying up in the rear. Today, they had no intention of preparing or serving any ramen. Shikamaru inquired, so, where are your brothers? They should be here soon enough. I'm sure Gaara wouldn't miss something like this, she responded. She noted, so many people are dressed in black. Shikamaru surveyed the area. Shikamaru was shocked to see everyone wearing their funeral clothes, saying, yeah. I wasn't expecting anyone to really care about the funeral, but in this instance, it seems I'm wrong. Well, this won't be the last time you're wrong about something, she responded. Probably, he shrugged his shoulders in response. Tamari and Shikamaru saw Shino, Sakura, Choji, Kiba, and Ino approaching them. Shikamaru said, you guys notice everyone's wearing black? Kiba said, yeah. Anyone else find it odd? Shino added, agreed. I find it weird they all suddenly care about Naruto's death, to the discussion. A voice behind them said, why would you find it weird? Everyone turned to watch Kankuro and Gaara approach. According to Shino, what do you mean? Naruto has done many things in such a short time, Gaara said. He has fought with Zabuza Momochi and survived. During the exams he fought me and won. And from what I hear, after that, he faced Orochimaru and Kabuto when searching for Tsunade Senju. And on his last mission, he went to bring back one Sasuke Uchiha, who left without permission. Naruto is a hero of this village, who gave everything for it, and these people seem to finally realize that. However, they are a tad too late, as they should have realized it before now. Everyone nodded in agreement with Gaara's statement. Indeed, Naruto had not had the best of friends over the years. But regardless of how strange or unconventional he was at times, they had all at least recognized him as a person and for his shinobi abilities. Naruto's remaining companions, Hinata, Neji, Tenten, and Lee, had arrived. "Looks like everyone's here," Shikamaru said. "We'll be off," said Tucci. The news of Naruto's passing saddened both Tucci and Ayame. He was their most cherished client. When Naruto came around to eat, he was always so intelligent and vivacious. Naturally, that bright light in their lives vanished when they learned of his passing. "Well, we all might as well go too," Hinata's statement was. The owner of Ichiraku and his daughter, the Sand siblings, and the Leaf Genin departed and made their way to the location of the funeral. Well, on the rooftop closest to the location of the funeral services, Naruto stood next to the elderly man. Naruto's appearance had been altered by the old man using some kind of jutsu. The jutsu wasn't just any transformation jutsu, rather than being an illusion, it truly altered Naruto. All Naruto was doing was observing his friends as they gazed at a photo of him. "So many people!" Naruto exclaimed, astounded by the turnout for his funeral. Nor was he merely referring to his pals. Naruto was discussing how it appeared that all of the villagers and ninjas inside the village were dressed in black and were forming a line on the roofs and in the streets below. The old man said, "Different from what you expected." "Very," Naruto responded. "It's interesting, isn't it?" The old man was starting to annoy Naruto, so he asked, "What are you babbling about now, old man?" He would go from being cryptic to being blunt, and well, the guy was just strange. "You always thought they hated you because they knew what was inside of you, but it seems they have more than enough respect to show up for your funeral. Maybe they realized you weren't the Kyuubi, but truly a hero, or they're just hoping that by this act, they won't be sent to hell for their own past transgressions." Naruto glanced around at the nearby villagers, who appeared to have missed nothing the elderly man had just said. Had the elderly man conjured up some illusion? Naruto wasn't entirely certain. He was only aware that the elderly man had taken some action. "I'd like to think people are better than that," explained Naruto. Naruto was alluding to the final section of the elderly man's brief tirade. The old man shook his head and said, "Yes, I suppose we all have that desire. It seems like the funeral is about to begin. I suspect you will learn things about yourself soon that you never thought would be true." Wondering what he meant by that, Naruto turned to face the elderly man. The elderly man was clearly aware of something, but he was unwilling to reveal it. Naruto's gaze shifted to Tsunade, who had started talking. Well, Tsunade surveyed the area. The sheer number of people who attended Naruto's funeral pleased her. For many, it didn't matter that he was being recognized as a hero. For example, the Hyuga were occasionally arrogant and conceited. She was genuinely surprised that they attended Naruto's funeral, but like every other clan, they had. After glancing at Jiraiya, who was standing next to her, Tsunade cleared her throat and started talking. Just before departing on his final mission, Tsunade had completed the paperwork, saying, "First of all, I thank all of you for coming and showing your respect for my adopted grandson." When he returned, she would tell him, "I feel as if you should all know who his parents were. He was the son of Minato Namikaze. You knew him better as the Yellow Flash during the Third Great War and the Fourth Hokage." Everyone was whispering to each other, and there were gasps that could be heard everywhere. Tsunade ignored this and continued talking. Tsunade was happy that many people paled when she mentioned Kushina's nickname because she had a tendency to lose her temper. His mother was Kushina Uzumaki, better known to most as the Red Whirlwind. Naruto never knew who his parents were, as that was the final request of his parents to keep him safe. He was to be told on his 16th birthday, however, that's not possible anymore. There is also one more bit of information you should all know, even if many of you already do know it. Naruto was the container of the Kyuubi. The demon could not be killed. The only way to save the village was for Naruto's own father, the fourth Hokage, to seal the beast within his son. Naruto was a hero of this village, yet many of you could only see the fox that had taken so many lives that night. All Naruto wanted to be was the Hokage of this village and to gain the respect of those within it. Tsunade paused for a moment as she was trying to conceal her feelings. What was said astounded everyone in the various crowds, whether they were on the roofs or the streets. Many repeatedly asked themselves the same question. Is it something I would be willing to do to my own child? For that one straightforward question, none of them had a response. Only a select few were aware of Naruto's ancestry's secret. Kakashi silently stood and gazed down. He was aware that he was one of the few experts. Kurenai was standing beside him. She had stayed with him last night. All she had done was sit on the couch and try to console the upset Junin. She couldn't abandon him. For the first time, Naruto's friends realized why he had been singled out as a child. However, their perception of him remained largely unchanged by this news. They saw Naruto as just Naruto, a blonde with a hyperactive personality who seemed to brighten the world. The majority of them were taken aback by Naruto's parents' identities. It never occurred to them that those two would be his parents. However, the news did not come as a huge surprise to Shikamaru. He couldn't stop thinking about how much Naruto and the fourth Hokage resembled each other. Tsunade had calmed down and started talking once more. Naruto was a hero of this village, not just for having the Kyuubi sealed within him, but for his actions during the crisis during the last Chunin exams. He defeated Gaara of the desert, who is soon to be Kazekage, a short distance outside of the village. Gaara is currently in attendance. Some of his other accomplishments were fighting with my former teammate and surviving, which many of you must realize is not easy. Also, he had to face Zabuza Momochi on his very first C-rank mission. Needless to say, when Naruto was in the woods was actually Orochimaru. Tsunade concluded and left, saying, "That's all I have to say. Please approach and say a few last words if you wish." She simply could no longer stand there and talk without crying. She was swiftly followed by Jiraiya. The crowd gathered around his photo. It so happened that Hinata was the first person there. She had a white flower in her hand. After whispering, "Naruto-kun, if you're still alive, please come home," she put the flower in front of the photo and left. The next person to enter the picture was Sakura. She was silent for a moment as she stood there. After setting down her flower, she said, "I'm sorry, Naruto. I'm sorry about everything," and walked away. Well, he left the old man standing on the roof after hearing Tsunade's words and the final words of some of his friends. He needed time to reflect. Naruto found himself making his way back to his former apartment through the streets of Konoha. The elderly man who appeared in front of Naruto asked, "Are you just going to sit around and mope for the rest of the day or what?" "I had the right to know," Naruto muttered. "Why would he tell them to do that? Look at it this way. Your father was hated by at the very least two of the great shinobi villages. Before he died that night he gave an order. That order protected you from those who would want you dead because of who he was. There was nothing left he could do but that. They still could have told me. That's one of the only things I've ever wanted to know." The elderly man let out a sigh. "And at your age, you would have told people and the secret would be out. They were smart in not telling you who either of your parents were. They would have had to keep Anbu guards on you at all times otherwise. That means a great deal of resources tied up just for a single child." Silently, the two strolled down the street, listening to the conversation of others. Everyone was discussing Naruto and the funeral. But there was nothing negative in what they were saying. They soon reached Naruto's former apartment. Naruto said, "Mind letting me be alone for a while?" "Very well," he answered, vanishing from view. With a sigh, Naruto approached the door of his apartment. Because he had rigged the door to unlock if you jiggled the handle in a specific way, he didn't need a key. He always had a key under the doormat, of course, in case that didn't work. In the center of his apartment, Naruto stood. It seemed to him that he would have to decide on the old man's offer today. Only a few items in his apartment had sentimental value. Otherwise, there wasn't much there. He entered his bedroom and examined the two photos on the counter by his bed. Team 7 was featured in one photo, while the three rookie teams were featured in another. He took the two photos in his hands. The only things that truly held significance for him were these. Naruto took a seat on the bed and gazed at the photo. Where had everything gone wrong, he wondered. Well, in Training Area 7, Kakashi stood before the stone. The names of his two former teammates were inscribed on this stone. The stone was set aside for people who had lost their lives while serving the village. Tsunade had permitted Kakashi to affix his pupil's name to the stone. As he had done twice before, Kakashi pulled out his kunai and etched the name into the stone. Kurenai watched Kakashi slowly inscribe the name on the black memorial stone while standing a few feet behind him. She decided it was best not to leave Kakashi alone just yet. Kurenai wanted to say something to Kakashi, but she was at a loss for words that would change anything. She saw Kakashi complete the engraving of Naruto's given name and family. He appeared to do nothing but stand there. Kurenai approached him from behind and touched his shoulder. Kurenai did not want Kakashi to stand here and stare at the stone all day, so she said, "Kakashi, I think it would be best if we leave. Just a little while longer." "All right," she said quietly in response. Well. On top of the Hokage monument, Sasuke stood. He had received congratulations from Orochimaru for killing Naruto. Sasuke was obviously very perplexed by this because he chose not to kill Naruto. After speaking with Orochimaru, the snake-like man somehow consented to take him to the village for the alleged funeral. He most likely consented because he was aware that the village's security would be weak and insufficient at the moment. Because he left Naruto breathing and alive, Sasuke knew he wasn't dead. He recalled the altercation. He had flashbacks to his battle with Naruto. He was particularly interested in two pictures. The picture of him telling Naruto that he couldn't scratch his forehead protector or their last jutsu. Naruto disengaged his Rasengan at the last second to scratch his forehead protector, something he had not previously noticed. Frustrated, Sasuke punched the stone. He believed he had prevailed, but Naruto ultimately triumphed once more. Orochimaru asked, emerging from the earth, "Something wrong, Sasuke-kun?" "It's nothing. Naruto's not dead. Let's go." "How can you be so sure?" Sasuke passed Orochimaru and disappeared into the trees, saying, "Because I didn't kill him. He's still out there somewhere. I told you that already." Orochimaru grinned. Sasuke and Orochimaru vanished from view after Orochimaru said, "Is that so? Very well, we shall depart." Well. Jiraiya and Tsunade had just entered her office. Sitting behind her desk, Tsunade gazed down at the documents before her. It was a few minutes before either of them spoke, and the room fell silent. Jiraiya sat on the windowsill and said, "You gave Shizune the day off?" "Yeah. I didn't think she'd want to work today. You realize if Naruto really is dead, the fox will be revived eventually, and he will come here first. Not to mention, the other villages, like Kumo or Iwa, will take advantage of our lack of a Jinchuriki long before the fox will be able to take physical form again." To which Tsunade replied, I know, what are we supposed to do though, Jiraiya? With Orochimaru's little plan during the exams, our forces are diminished. Everyone's pulling double and triple shifts just to keep up with the normal amounts of missions we did before that event. Even if they don't attack in 3 or 4 years, we still won't be able to really stop them if they commit to a fight after that time. The best we can do is bluff them for now as long as we possibly can and pray they don't try anything. None of this had ever crossed her mind. Now that Naruto and Sasuke were gone, she was all too aware of what might occur. On her desk, Tsunade rested her head. "What do I do, Jiraiya? It's like when my little brother died." Jiraiya touched Tsunade's shoulder as she emerged from behind her. "You came to me back then for support, and I'm still here. I'm not exactly sure why I stuck around over the years, but I did. I'm sorry. I should have." Jiraiya interrupted her. "Tsunade, it's all right. If I was really angry over it, I would have left years ago. Answer me. What do we do now, Jiraiya?" "Well, we get married and have a kid. I mean, it's not unheard of for people our age to have children." Jiraiya began her tirade. Tsunade grinned and chuckled. "That's not what I meant. Really, I thought it was a pretty good plan myself," Jiraiya said wisely, nodding away. "Thank you. Anytime," was his response. Well. A couple of hours had passed since the funeral. Since then, Hinata had been exploring alone and had come close to Naruto's apartment. Since leaving the funeral, she hadn't seen any of her friends. It was Neji's desire to follow her, but Tenten had intervened. At the moment, Hinata felt totally lost. Even though she didn't think Naruto was dead, she couldn't help but feel afraid that she wouldn't see him again after the funeral. With a sigh, she glanced up at Naruto's flat. She was not the first time she had been here. The first was to tell him the truth. But she simply couldn't come out from behind the wall and tell him once she saw him. Rewind in order to tell Naruto that she liked him. Hinata had risen early today. At the moment, she was waiting for Naruto to emerge from behind a wall. At the moment, Hinata was thinking about how she would tell him she was sorry. She questioned herself, what should I say? She attempted to say, I love you, Naruto. As she scolded herself, she said, no, that's too blunt. It also didn't sound right to say, I really like you, Naruto. Hinata sighed, I just want to be your girlfriend. She sounded too desperate for that. She continued to go over a few more lines while standing there, but nothing sounded correct. As the door unlocked, Hinata heard it. She turned the corner quickly, but she lost all self-confidence when she saw him standing there, yawning loudly, and she immediately ducked behind the wall once more. As she left, feeling sad that she lacked the courage to speak, Hinata thought, I'll never be able to tell him at this rate. Final flashback. Hinata sighed sadly, thinking that she might have missed her opportunity to tell him for good. Well, In the barbecue restaurant, Naruto's friends, aside from Hinata, were seated and discussing the past. They had all just arrived an hour ago and had been sitting there discussing Naruto's accomplishments and antics. "Hey, you guys remember when Naruto put graffiti on the stone faces of the Hokage?" replied Kiba. Ino said, "Yeah. I heard he outran a few Junin when they were finally sent out to get him," to continue the discussion. "Yeah. I think Iruka Sensei was the one who actually caught him," Shikamaru replied. Choji laughed. "Yeah. Then Iruka made him clean it all off." They all burst out laughing. "Yeah, Naruto was always pulling pranks like that," said Kiba. "Paint bombs in the teacher's lounge, smoke bombs in the broom closets. Don't forget about the time he glued Iruka to his own chair," Ino chuckled. "Oh yeah. That was a great one. He was so pissed that day," Kiba laughed. The fact that Hinata was alone was starting to irritate Neji. Neji said, "I should go get Hinata. She should be here," and stood up. Tenten said sternly, "Sit down, Neji, and leave the girl be." Neji paused and took a seat again. Falling to the ground in laughter, Kiba exclaimed, "Damn, Neji, you're whipped." The rest of the group burst out laughing at Neji. "So, Neji, how does it feel to be whipped by the girl sitting next to you?" Tamari inquired. Then he muttered, "I'm in hell." Shikamaru took a gulp of his tea. "Welcome to the club, Neji." Tamari questioned, "What was that, Shikamaru?" "Nothing," Shikamaru blurted out. Everyone started laughing again. Well, still gazing at the picture in his hands, Naruto sat in his room. The method the elderly man had used on him had long since faded. The old man had asked Naruto to leave, and Naruto had not seen him since. With the picture in hand, Naruto at last began to get out of bed. The elderly man was seated on the couch when he emerged from his bedroom. The elderly man questioned, "What's your answer, Naruto?" "I believe right here and now would be the best time to make your decision. So tell me, will you take me up on my offer?" "I suppose I can't tell anyone I'm alive. No, I like the fact that no one knows that I'm alive. Let me just grab a few items that I don't want to leave behind." The elderly man got to his feet. "Very well, take what you like. It's yours, after all." Well, on the street in front of Naruto's apartment, Hinata was still visible. She moved slowly up the stairs to the apartment building. She walked very slowly to the front door after climbing the stairs. She pulled the key from beneath the mat and raised it up. She heard voices just before she walked in and inserted the key into the door. "Is that really all you want to bring with you, Naruto?" Naruto.kun. Hinata pondered. She didn't even realize that Naruto was on the other side of the door. "Yeah. This is all that means anything to me." That's the voice of Naruto.kun. When Hinata saw Naruto's familiar form behind the door, she snapped her eyes open and felt an adrenaline rush. A tiny jar in his pocket caught her attention in her excitement. It was the same jar she had given him during the Chunin exams. There was nobody inside the apartment when Hinata hurriedly turned the key and opened the door. She wondered if she had been seeing things after looking everywhere in her field of vision and finding nothing. That was the voice of Naruto.kun. As she hurriedly searched for what he had allegedly taken with him, Hinata thought, "I know it." Rectangular imprints on the dust. Free counter were the only obvious missing item she could find, along with a pair of pictures. "I should tell someone," she exclaimed as she started to bolt out the door. Other than a few missing photos, there was absolutely no proof that he was still alive. They would all simply stare at her as if she had lost her mind. Before departing, Hinata gave the area one final glance. At the elderly man's residence in his new room, Naruto placed the few things he had brought on the shelf. He had agreed to the old man's suggestion. He was still unaware of the old man's identity, though. "I hope the room isn't too small for you." Naruto saw the elderly man enter the room as he turned around. "No, it's fine." "All right, I think it's time you told me who you were, old man. You sure as hell ain't normal. Even by ninja standards, you aren't normal." The elderly man stroked his beard and grinned. "Very well, I suppose. You agreed to my proposal. I believe you have the right to know who I am." With a very irritated tone, Naruto said, "Okay, let's hear it, you old coot. You sound annoyed. I suppose after all that's happened, I won't fault you for it." Adding, "And your beating around the bush isn't helping anything," Naruto answered. The elderly man grinned and opened his eyes, exposing a number of rings surrounding the pupils. "I'm the first ninja our world ever saw. I am the Rikudo Sennin." Tsunade was reviewing paperwork while seated at her desk. The Leaf had been suffering greatly over the last 6 months, as Kumo had been progressing as she had anticipated. Iwa had not moved at all. But the Tsuchikage of today was a cunning old coot. He would definitely take advantage of the situation and complete what they had begun if Kumo failed. According to reports she had heard, there were at least 2 Kumo ninja teams within their boundaries. Naturally, Tsunade had dispatched teams to locate them. But they had discovered nothing. Both squads were waiting for something. But the thing that worried her the most was that she had no idea what it was. Tsunade let out a sigh. She had spent the last 3 hours or more working on paperwork. These days, there was simply too much to do. More so than at any point since the funeral of Naruto. She opened her desk's upper right drawer. There were 3 photos in there. The 3 rookie teams were one of them. She received a copy from a friend of Naruto's. The second image featured Naruto's current pals. The photo was taken approximately 1 month ago. Now everyone was an Anbu or Junin. Since the funeral, they had all become stronger and lost themselves in training. They all made remarkable progress very quickly, from the slothful Shikamaru to the charming, lovable, and ever-kind Hinata, who had always struggled with confidence. Tsunade asked herself, 3.5 years? Has it really been that long already? The third photo, taken last week, was displayed by Tsunade. She, her husband Jiraiya, and their daughter, who was now a little over 2 years old, were all shown in the photo. She was still unsure of how that had happened. When Tsunade learned she was pregnant, she was genuinely shocked. She reasoned that she would not have been able to conceive after all the years of fighting and physical abuse. The fact that she shared Jiraiya's hair color is even more unbelievable. Fortunately, her hair was straight, just like hers. A knock on the door was heard by Tsunade, calling out, "Come in." With Shizune at her heels, her daughter Kushina bounded into the room. Kushina was already quite skilled at running despite her youth. She sprang on her mother as she hurried around the table. "Mommy!" exclaimed Kushina joyfully. Tsunade gave Kushina a head pat while grinning. "Where's your father?" Shizune caught Tsunade's attention by coughing. "You sent him out last night, Tsunade, to gather some intel. He should be back sometime today." "Oh, right. I completely forgot I had sent him out to check on a few things." With excitement, Kushina said, "Mommy, done yet?" Then she said, "Sorry, sweetie, Mommy isn't done yet. Lady Tsunade, I'm sure I can take care of the office for at least an hour while you take your daughter to the park or something," said Shizune. "Yay!" exclaimed Kushina. Tsunade got up, picked up her daughter, and went to her office door. Kushina shouted, "No," as Tsunade approached the door. She inquired, "What is it?" Kushina gestured toward the window that was open. "That door." Tsunade began to perspire. That wasn't a door, even though it was cute. Kushina laughed merrily as Tsunade walked to the window and leapt out, saying, "Okay, we'll use that door." She pondered if she would have to admit him to the hospital for instilling bad habits in their daughter once more. "Damn it, Jiraiya, we're going to have words about this," she thought. Well, Hinata had just gotten up from her bed. She needed to rest after returning from an extremely exhausting mission before embarking on her most recent assignment. Now, Hinata was an Anbu. For more than a year, she had been one. She currently served as her team's tracker and leader. Hinata yawned loudly as she sat up in bed. She wore an oversized shirt and nothing else to bed. She lived alone in her own apartment, which was the only reason she did. A little more than 2 years had passed since she left the Hyuga estate. Other than her appearance, Hinata had not changed much over the previous 3.5 years, and she had mostly overcome her problems with self-confidence. Many people characterized Hinata as a woman whose beauty was equaled only by her leaf ninja abilities. In fact, numerous nobles and higher-ranking ninja from the Leaf and other friendly countries had courted her. But she rejected them all, and sometimes quite harshly. One man was all she was waiting for. But for years, that man had been regarded as dead. After sitting in bed for a few minutes, Hinata made the decision to get out. Before she was to meet her team and leave, she took off her shirt and went into the bathroom to quickly shower. Her task was to track down and destroy the 2 Kumo ninja teams that were said to have entered the Land of Fire. About 15 miles from the village, they were said to have been near a small town, but that was day-old information. After turning on the water, Hinata just stood there and allowed the warm water to run over her. Before a mission started, Hinata loved to take a nice, hot shower because she knew that was the only one she would get until the mission was over. Hinata combed through her long, damp hair with her fingers. She had allowed it to spread over the years. It was now as long as her butt. She had grown to really enjoy her long hair, even though it could be a nuisance at times. At last, Hinata had completed her shower. She hurriedly wrapped herself in a towel and left the restroom. Her Anbu equipment was ready when she woke up because she had set it out before bed. She hurriedly dressed after the towel fell to the ground. After tying her ninjutsu to her back and donning her mask, she was at last prepared. Hinata left her apartment and never came back. Exactly where did she go? That is, the memorial stone with Naruto's name carved on it, the same spot she always visited before and after a mission. A short distance from the memorial stone, Hinata emerged. Tsunade was standing there with her daughter Kushina in her arms. In violation of the rules, Hinata took off her mask. Nevertheless, her incredibly long hair and its color were a dead giveaway, so both friendly and hostile nations knew who she was, mask or not. Kushina exclaimed with delight, "Hina-chan here." Then Tsunade turned. Tsunade simply set Kushina down as she tried to wriggle out of her mother's arms. "Well, Hinata, here again I see." Running over, Kushina gave Hinata a leg hug. "You said you come to play." Grinning, Hinata lifted Kushina. "I'm sorry, I've just been really busy these days. After this mission, I should have a few days off. How about then?" "Promise?" she said in a cutesy way. Hinata said, "Of course I promise," and kissed the girl with the white hair on the cheek. With a giggle, Kushina gave Hinata a hug. Tsunade observed the two while standing. She kept thinking about how wonderful Hinata would be as a mother when she eventually had kids. It was more about whether or not she would ever have kids. This indicates that she had a crush on a man who has been dead for nearly 5 years. Before she left, Tsunade needed to speak with Hinata, but she could wait. Alongside Naruto was meditating while seated beneath a waterfall. He had to perform numerous tasks every day as part of his training, including this one. Naturally, Naruto trained primarily with shadow clones because it significantly accelerated his training. But from the old man's perspective, Naruto's training was far from over. Naruto complained while he was meditating. After nearly 4 years, he still lacked sufficient training. What was there left for him to learn from the old man? He had been practicing the skills he had learned from the old man for the last 6 months. Of course, he was a little annoyed by something else. It was the fact that he could only observe from a distance as Kumo advanced on Konoha. "Naruto, you're becoming irritated again. That doesn't exactly go well with meditating. Actually, it kinda defeats the purpose." Byako was lying down close to the waterfall's edge when Naruto opened his right eye. Byako was a white tiger that was called forth. Naruto's new summoned creatures were his kind. It seems that the old man drafted the agreement with them first, and Naruto was only the second to sign it. The leader of the tiger summons was Byako. Naturally, in order to avoid frightening anyone, he shrank in size. Naruto got to his feet and left the waterfall, saying, "Of course I'm irritated again. All I can do is watch while everything happens. Completed training or not, I don't plan on sticking around much longer." He didn't care that his clothes were soaked. Byako was lying at the edge of the waterfall, and Naruto approached him. A sword that looked familiar was leaning against a tree. The big white tiger said, "I've never asked this, but I find myself wondering, why such an awkwardly large sword? I think the owner would have wanted me to have it," he said. Who was the owner of such a sword? His name was Zabuza Momochi. People called him Demon of the Hidden Mist. He wielded this sword like it weighed nothing to him. I still remember how he swung this sword as if it was a ninjutsu. Naruto sighed as he recalled that moment. Naruto picked up the sword and strapped it to his back, saying, "We used it as his grave marker when he died. About 2 years ago or so, I asked the old man if we could go get it. He thought having a weapon was a good idea, so we went and got it. Of course I made sure to make a new marker." "I see," said Byako. Suddenly, a chilly wind blew by. Byako looked up at the darkening sky and said, "It seems there will be quite the storm tonight. With the winter temperatures, the rain will be freezing." "Indeed. I hope none of your friends get caught in that. Unlike you or me, the freezing rain could kill them if out in the open too long. I suppose I should get some dry clothes now." "Indeed. Your need to meditate with your clothes on and under the waterfall is quite odd. I just feel more comfortable in my clothes than just in my boxers." Over the years, Naruto's appearance and wardrobe choices have evolved. These days, he mostly wore black sandals, black ninja trousers, and a black shirt. In addition, he wore a coat that resembled his father's, but it was black with flames that were dark orange. Naruto had been advised by the elderly sage to dress in darker hues because it would be more difficult for people to locate him if he traveled at night. Naturally, Naruto couldn't wear a single solid color because he was Naruto. Naturally, he had to wear orange, his favorite color. Byako remarked, "You are quite the oddity, my boy," as they left for the forest. "Is that an insult or something? Take it how you wish." I'm not in the mood to explain everything to you. When Byako spoke as though he knew everything, Naruto detested it. It irritated him greatly. At that moment, a tiny white tiger cub fell on Naruto's head from a cloud of smoke. Holding the little tiger in front of his face, Naruto took him by the scruff of the neck. But the cub licked his nose before Naruto could respond. Naruto let out a sigh. Hiroki, how many times have I told you not to pop in on my head? Yes, and how many times have I told you not to come from the summoning realm of your own accord? Byako replied to his kid. The cub tiger grinned. I can't count that high, he said cheerfully. Your son's hopeless, Byako. One that is hopeless and older than he shouldn't speak about him being hopeless. Your dad can be really mean, you know that? Hiroki retorted, Daddy is daddy, while once more licking Naruto's nose. Byako and Naruto perspired. Neither of them spoke again. Hiroki was simply placed back on top of Naruto's head, and they resumed their stroll. Well, in his house, the elderly wise man sipped tea. Since Naruto went out to train alone at this time every day, he was pretty bored. Naruto exceeded his expectations by learning what should have taken him 50 years in just 3 years. Naruto had only spent the last 6 months perfecting his craft. But his training was not finished. That was only true because he was unsure of Naruto's readiness for the final portions of his training. From the other room, Naruto exclaimed, I'm back, old man. The old sage said, that was a rather quick training session today, as Naruto walked in. Yeah. The tiny tiger cub on his apprentice's head was eventually noticed by the elderly wise man. So, Hiroki decided to pop in again? Yeah. He wanted to play. Seems he managed to figure out how to use the seal you put on my arm. Naruto would not need to call forth Byako in order to use the seal on his arm. When Byako was needed, he would actually use the seal on Naruto's arm to call upon himself. Naruto said, well, I'm going to get some dry clothes, and started to leave the room. You're going to leave, aren't you? Naruto paused in the entrance. Naruto walked out of the room after saying, I can't just sit and watch any longer. I'd rather prevent a war from happening than watch it take place when I have the power to stop it. Byako questioned, are you going to stop him? The elderly wise man sighed. I wish he wouldn't go just yet, however, I won't stop him if that is his choice. His training is almost complete, he will be back when he knows his current level isn't enough. Go with him, Byako. He'll need your help. I don't see why he needs me. The boy is like a force of nature as it is. What could I possibly offer him? Naruto is still so young. He may be a force of nature when it comes to fighting, but he's still so immature, and whether you know it or not, he respects you. The wise man laughed. Hard to believe. I know the way you two fight some days. Byako perspired. When he said, I already apologized for destroying half the house, he was deadpan. His statement appeared to be entirely disregarded by the elderly wise man. I've never seen you so irritated before in my life. Byako snarled, that boy can be infuriating. He can be at times. Yet you've grown to like him very much. You treat him like one of your own and you know it. The elderly tiger said nothing. I know the boy will summon you if he really needs you, but do try to just stay in this realm as much as you can. That might cause problems, it may not. Byako got up and moved toward the door that led to the exit. Very well, I'll do as you've asked. Well. Naruto was standing on top of the old sage's house after completing his transformation. He was simply thinking while gazing into the clouds. What was he contemplating? Well, that was quite easy. His pals. Naruto pondered their reaction upon learning that he was still alive. He was certain that Sakura would sulk and leave. That mental picture made Naruto laugh a little. So you're leaving, Naruto? Naruto didn't look back. He said to the elderly wise man behind him, yeah. I can't sit here anymore, old man. Why? You going to stop me or something? His response was, no, I didn't plan on it. Well then, I'll be off. Just remember your training isn't complete yet. Naruto jumped off the roof and vanished from view, saying, yeah, I know. Returning to Konoha, Tsunade saw as Kushina was thrown into the air by Hinata, who caught her when she descended again. In Hinata's embrace, Kushina chuckled joyfully. Hinata, shouldn't you be going soon? I mean, your team has been waiting in the trees since you arrived, Tsunade responded. I know. They always wait for me to finish here. It's nothing different from any other time. After a moment, Kushina exclaimed, we came to see Nichin. Hinata smiled and asked, did you now? Hinata raised an eyebrow in Tsunade's direction. Tsunade turned her gaze to the side and the floor. Behind Hinata, an Anbu in a sparrow mask said, well, I'm sure you can meet your Nichin soon. Sparrow. Kushina nodded and said, Kushina, could you go with Sparrow for a little? After giving Kushina to Sparrow, Hinata left, asking the youngster what she wanted to do. I tried telling her Naruto isn't around anymore, but kids her age don't understand death, and shouldn't have to. So you told her Naruto was here? Tsunade placed her hand on his name after glancing at the stone. For several minutes, they stood there in silence. I didn't know what else to do. I did try to tell her he was gone, but it didn't work. She just thought he was away on a long trip. I made up some story and told her about this place and she wanted to come here. Behind Hinata, Sparrow emerged holding a dozing Kushina. Sparrow went over and gave Tsunade her daughter in the carving, saying, I apologize, but she became very excited and exhausted after I made her a carving. Tsunade took the carving and her daughter. After giving it some thought, she grinned and said, It's okay. I appreciate you taking care of her while your team leader and I had a private conversation. Sparrow turned to Hinata and said, Of course, Hokage. Sama. Sparrow vanished after saying, We'd better be leaving now. That's if you want to finish this mission, or at least get anywhere before the storm hits later tonight. I suppose he's right. We have maybe 6 hours before the storm begins, and with any luck, the Kumo ninja won't have gone far from where they were last sighted. Hinata reattached her mask. Fox was her code name. Given how attractive she was, some people commented on her Anbu name. I'll see you when I get back, Lady Tsunade. Just be careful. I don't want to bury any of Naruto's friends. Of course. After saying that, Hinata vanished from view. She sure has changed. Tsunade turned to face her husband, who was sitting in a tree, and said, I was wondering when you'd get back. And Hinata really hasn't changed. The only thing really different about her is that she's not as shy as she used to be. They want a Hyuga. Over my dead body, shot back Tsunade. That's what I figured you would say, so I already told them it's not going to happen. With a sigh, Tsunade turned to face her daughter. So the only way to avert war is by some miracle? At this point, that's about all there is. I didn't want our daughter to see that kind of thing till she was much older, if ever. I won't argue with you about that. It's not exactly something a father looks forward to. At least be thankful she's only 2 and she won't have to go and fight with the others. Do you think any of this would have happened if Naruto were here still? Jiraiya let out a sigh. I really couldn't say. However, the fact he had the Kyuubi inside him was probably a rather large deterrent. Tsunade grinned as she glanced down at her daughter. They started to make their way back to the Hokage's office. So, Jiraiya, why are you teaching our daughter bad habits? Jiraiya began to perspire a bit. Jiraiya tried to sidestep the topic by saying sweet things like, I have no idea what you're talking about, my love. Oh, I'm sure you do, considering she thinks a window is a door, much like yourself. Jiraiya gave a small laugh. Okay, maybe I did say something like that to her. He was given Kushina by Tsunade, who said, well, talk about this later. Just take her home and put her to bed. And do spend some time with her when she wakes up. No way I'm getting out of the talk later, is there? He said. Not a chance, was her response. Kushina in hand, Jiraiya vanished from view. Grinning, Tsunade carried on walking. She questioned why, all those years ago, she had never given him a chance. In fact, since she gave him a chance, Jiraiya had stopped his spying. That was not what she had anticipated. She could live with the fact that he still peeped, but it was only on her. For a long time, Tsunade harbored feelings for Jiraiya, but she was never able to follow through. Naturally, she looked to Naruto for solace up until his passing. When something bad happened in her life, she always did that. Her younger brother was the first, followed by Dan and Naruto. Years ago, she wished she had given Jiraiya a chance. All the white-haired idiot, as she called him at times, wanted was to please her. Naturally, she had to beat him when he became a little perverted. But she had truly never been happier since she gave him that opportunity nearly 4 years ago. There were a lot of people waiting when Tsunade returned to her office. They had previously been on teams 7, 8, 10, and Guy. Additionally, those teams' sensei were present. As a battle group, she had dispatched them all to patrol the border of the Land of Fire. Aside from the 2 4-man cells that were reportedly spotted, this group had been very successful in preventing any and all Kumo ninja from entering the Land of Fire. Although having so many in one group wasn't typical, she was certain that they divided into multiple smaller groups as they patrolled. Before speaking to them, Tsunade took a seat in her chair. I see you all came back safe and sound. Now please make your report. Yes, well, while on the border, we intercepted 4 teams of Kumo ninja. 3 teams were eliminated, while the other managed to flee back into Kumo territory, Kakashi said. Good, very good. I have your next assignment. All of you will go to the fort nearest the Kumo border. You will have 2 days to rest before you have to leave. Understood? They all responded with a nod. Very good. You all may leave. Except for Neji and Tenten, everyone departed. Something you need? Neji inquired, is Hinata back yet? Sorry, Neji, but she just left about 10 minutes ago on her next mission. Neji let out a sigh. I see, is there something wrong? Tsunade inquired. It's been 6 months since anyone at the clan has been able to speak with her. She's always either out on a mission or avoiding us entirely. Can you blame her? She doesn't exactly care about all these different suitors you keep shoving in her face. Not to mention she moved out of the clan compound to get away from the elders. Just leave her alone. Neji and Tenten turned and left the Hokage's office, saying, well, maybe I'll be able to talk with her once she comes back. Good day, Hokage. Sama. Tenten wrapped her arms around one of Neji-kun's and said, Neji-kun, you really need to stop making such a fuss about all this. Hinata just wants to be left alone, like Tsunade. Sama said. Tenten dragged Neji away before saying, now come on. Let's get something to eat. I'm starved. Alongside Naruto with Byako by his side and Zabuza's ancient sword strapped to his back, Naruto had just reached a huge bridge. Naruto was wearing a mask and hood to conceal his face. He didn't exactly want anyone to see him just yet. He approached the stone with the engraving on it. As he read the inscription, Naruto grinned. As usual, Byako praised Naruto with a hint of sarcasm, but he seemed impressed. So you had a rather large bridge named after you. Bravo. Now why exactly are we here? It's been a few years and I feel like paying my respects to some people I used to know. That a good enough answer for you? It will suffice for now. There were 2 graves and a small clearing not far from the beaten path on the opposite side of the bridge. Naruto approached the pair of tombs. He simply stood there, gazing at the gravestone he had carved when he had taken the sword a few years prior. Well, I'll leave you to it. I spotted a deer a little ways back and I'm a bit hungry. Sure. Just don't be seen. Byako vanished into the forest. Naruto heard someone approaching from the brush and clutched the sword's hilt on his back. Since they wouldn't be making such noises, he knew it wasn't a ninja. Who are you and what are you doing in this place? I believe there was a off-limits sign back there somewhere. Naruto didn't look back. Only beneath his mask did he smile. Naruto recognized the voice. It was that of Tazuna the bridge builder, though he was most likely now known by a different name. Still drinking a lot, old man? I may be old, and I may perhaps drink quite a bit, however, I don't think we've met before. Also, I believe that weapon you're holding doesn't belong to you, but to the man buried in that grave. Naruto turned around and took off his mask. Actually, we have met, you old drunkard, and I don't think Zabuza would mind me using the sword. Tazuna rubbed his eyes repeatedly after glancing at the sake bottle in his hand and dropping it as if it were poison. So are you something the sake conjured up? Naruto gave a few blinks. I don't think you drank enough for anything like that to happen. You'd probably die if you ever drank that much, Tazuna. So it is you, Naruto. Everyone kept saying you were dead. I even visited your grave. Well, as much a grave as they can give someone, seeing as they can't exactly give everyone that's died their own. Yeah, well, to everyone, I am dead, at least for now. Tazuna picked up the sake bottle again and drank the remaining contents, asking, so what have you been doing all this time? Training and the like, was his response. Why are you here? Tazuna gave a small smile. Tazuna approached the graves and stood next to Naruto, saying, sounds like the Naruto I know. Me? Well, I come here every so often and share a drink with Zabuza here. I take it you won't be staying any length of time? Naruto answered, no, there are things I need to do. How have things been since I've been gone? Tazuna described the events leading up to the present day in detail, saying, things have been pretty good since Gato's been killed. Our country managed to take control of his empire. Sounds like life's been good to you and your family. Tazuna gave several nods. Indeed. It has been. Oh, I almost forgot. A few hours ago, a Konoha Anbu stopped by and asked a few questions. About what? Tazuna stood for a moment with a little drool running down his cheek. It appears that 2 groups of Kumo ninja crossed the border. They were spotted at a town across the bridge near the coast. I'm sure the Kumo ninja are still around there. If you look, I'm sure you'll bump into one of the groups. What are you fantasizing about? Oh, it's just the Anbu that came here was quite shapely and had very long, dark-colored hair. I wish I could have seen her face. I probably could have died a happy man. Naruto's perspiration fell. Naruto began to leave after saying, "Are all old people perverts?" "You know what, don't answer that question. I really don't want to know. I'll be back and maybe I can stay longer then." Tazuna questioned, "Why can't you just live here? I mean, no one knows you're still alive. You could live a peaceful life here." A big white tiger descended from a tree and landed next to Naruto. "That does sound nice, but that's just not for me right now. There are too many things I need to do before I can think about living that kind of life. Byako, we're leaving." With a wave of his hand, Naruto said, "Just be careful, there is that rather nasty storm," and turned to leave. Tazuna said to himself, "Well, I better be going home. It's freezing out here and it will probably be dark in an hour or so. I suppose I'll wait a few days before telling everyone. That boy will be just fine without my worrying," he said as he left for the forest. I should probably pick up some more sake on the way home." Alongside Hinata, rain had just begun to fall from the clouds as night fell. Her mask was lost in the woods, and Hinata's face was stung by the freezing rain. But none of this was even registering with Hinata. Why? She was running for her life, to put it simply. Her team had located the two Kumo ninja teams, and they launched a flawless attack. In a matter of seconds, they had eliminated 7 of the 8. They failed to consider, though, that the two-tailed Jinchuriki was one of the Kumo ninja. All things considered, they would never have imagined her in that group. Despite Hinata's and her team's efforts, Yugito Ni was too strong for them. After the initial attack, Yugito Ni fought back, but Hinata was the only one who survived. After just a few minutes of combat, Hinata and her group were overpowered by the Jinchuriki's overwhelming strength. Hinata was currently operating on almost nothing because she had expended far too much of her chakra. Even keeping her Byakugan activated was beyond her means. Hinata was also smashed through a tree, which resulted in a few broken ribs. Hinata was unsure of how much longer she could run. That didn't matter, though, because the branch she landed on next broke like a twig. Oh no! As she fell, she thought. She thumped against the damp ground. Not far from Hinata, Yugito touched down. Yugito smirked as she started to approach Hinata, saying, "Well, it looks like I'll be rewarded once I return to Kumo. It's not every day one finds an unsealed Hyuga woman in combat." Hinata attempted to stand but was unsuccessful. Hinata cried out, "Stay away from me." She knew very well what would happen to her if she were taken prisoner and returned to Kumo. She was utterly terrified by the thought. Still on the ground, Hinata kept backing up until her back struck a tree. Yugito said, "There's nowhere to run anymore," as she approached more closely. But she stopped. She could hear it coming. Something large and swift. She jumped back just in time to avoid a huge black sword that was slicing through the trees as her eyes widened. Everything in its path was cut by the sword, including the ground, branches, and entire tree trunks. "I've already seen that sword. But the man who uses it ought to be dead. Not to mention that the sword had a wind blade. I am positive that Zabuza was unable to use wind chakra," she thought rapidly. A man with a mask over his face appeared, clad in a black raincoat. The sword reappeared in his outstretched hand. "Just leave," he said. Hinata was losing the fight to remain conscious, and her vision was failing her. Other than the fact that the figure was rather tall and wearing black, she was unable to identify it at all. The voice was also vaguely familiar. It was unlike anything Yugito had ever seen. This individual in front of her was no amateur. Additionally, she had never heard of or seen the ability to call forth a weapon in that manner. Moreover, the Biju that was imprisoned within her was trembling. The proud two-tailed cat was in a state she had never seen before. But she was unable to go. Not when she was on the verge of bringing back a Hyuga girl who had not been sealed. At least not without a fight. This was not a fight Yugito was up for. Although she was good at hiding it, Hinata's team had dealt her a good deal of damage. But Hinata was primarily responsible for the harm. Even to her, that gentle fist style of fighting was devastating. Yugito was aware that she would have to stop this immediately or else she would undoubtedly perish. Naruto stood with his sword ready, waiting for Yugito to respond. "I'll only ask you one more time to leave." As she prepared herself, she answered, "I can't leave without her, it's that simple." After vanishing from view, Naruto reappeared behind Yugito. Her eyes widened. Even with such a big sword in his hands, he was incredibly quick. The sword was already in Naruto's possession above her head. In an instant, he brought the sword down. By diving sideways, Yugito had just managed to avoid it. "He's wielding that sword like a toy abandoned by Kami," she shouted to herself. After she dodged, Naruto reacted swiftly, kicking her in the stomach while she was still in the air and sending her hurtling through the trees. Yugito flew through the forest and came to a stop, but she was too busy to think because she saw the enormous sword fly through the trees at her. To avoid being struck, she jumped to the side and vanished into the trees. "He's fast, damn it. If you don't come at me with everything you have, I'll kill you," said Naruto. The enormous sword immediately reappeared in his hand as he raised it. Although Naruto was unaware of his opponent's current location, he was certain that she was still in the forest. "You're the two-tailed Jinchuriki. You're supposed to be better than this." A torrent of rain accompanied the chilling wind that swept through the area. Naruto turned to face the girl who was leaning against the tree. At last, he recognized her. Hinata was the one. With one tail's worth of demonic chakra activated, Yugito suddenly blasted through the trees while he was preoccupied. She struck the person's masked face with her fist. It didn't work, though, because he just exploded into a cloud of smoke. Before she could finish, the masked figure appeared behind her, kicked her in the side, and sent her flying back into the trees. "A shadow clone? When did he?" she said. Yugito immediately executed a few hand seals after leaping straight into the air. Before Yugito could finish, Naruto materialized in front of her and slashed out at her with his sword. While in midair, Yugito barely avoided the man's sword's path. She kicked him in the face in retaliation. It only broke his mask, though, so it didn't have the desired effect. Before she could pull her leg back, Naruto grabbed her by the ankle. Then, like a rag doll, he swung her around in midair and threw her directly to the ground. Yugito struck the earth with tremendous force. A lightning strike near her caused Naruto to fall to the ground. Naruto's mask came off, revealing his face. "You're a lot more worn out than you were letting on. I figured you'd have much more fight left in you than that." Slowly rising from the floor, Yugito was taken aback by the sight of the face. He had blonde hair, blue eyes, and whisker marks on his cheeks. She was familiar with that description. This man was exactly what the Kyuubi container described. She shouted, "You're supposed to be dead." "Yeah, I guess I am. But I'm not," he answered. "Ever been to your own funeral?" he inquired. Yugito no longer seemed to be a threat to Naruto, who said, "It's just so weird when you're standing near everyone and they don't even know it." After fastening his sword to his back, he approached Hinata and embraced her. She felt like ice and was drenched. When Naruto turned his back, Yugito attempted to move to exploit it, but she was unable to make any headway. "What did you do to me?" Naruto began to leave, but Yugito interrupted him, saying, "I put a seal on your body that has essentially paralyzed you. Don't worry. It's not permanent. It'll wear off in probably 10 minutes or so." She questioned, "Were you not going to kill me?" Since she would typically be killed or captured if she were in this situation, she wasn't sure why she had asked the question. Naruto shrugged his shoulders and turned around. "To be honest, killing you would probably be more trouble than it's worth. If you leave me alive, I'll come after you." Naruto grinned. "Your choice." Yugito stood motionless as Naruto disappeared from view. "You shouldn't provoke him," the demon cat said at last. Yugito snorted, "Shut up, and go back to cowering in the fetal position," in response. Well, Naruto reached the cave's entrance. Byako was lying next to the fire when he entered. Hinata was placed next to the fire by Naruto. He shifted her long hair from underneath her to next to her. When Byako said, "The others of her team didn't make it," Naruto stood staring at Hinata and said, "I see." He had to do something, but right now the thought was making his face flush. Byako, however, had no trouble stating what he would have to do. "You need to remove her wet clothes, or are you going to let her freeze?" Naruto screamed, "I know that, damn it, and of course not. I just don't feel comfortable taking her clothes off, that's all," he murmured. "Yeah, well, whether you feel comfortable or not is rather irrelevant now, isn't it?" With a sigh, Naruto took out several scrolls and opened them. It contained 2 blankets, a sleeping bag, and a few towels. Hinata was wearing an Enbu outfit, which Naruto swiftly removed. Except for a few moments when he needed to look at what he was actually touching, he was essentially keeping his eyes closed the entire time. Byako observed with some amusement. Naruto was just getting her Enbu uniform off. He did not remove her underwear or the combat bandages. He saw the bruises on her breasts, just below the combat wrappings. After gently picking Hinata up, Naruto laid her on the sleeping bag and covered her lower body with the blanket. He snatched up the towels and used them to dry her hair. He covered her upper body with the other blanket. He used a kunai to cut off the combat wraps while the blanket was on her chest and then removed them. "She may have some broken ribs judging from that type of bruising," Byako said. "I know. I'm not very good at the healing arts the old man showed me, but I can at least mend them a little and take away the bruising. Naruto's hands started to sparkle. The bruised skin started to return to its typical pale white hue. As he tried to control his own energy, Naruto was perspiring. The truth was that she would most likely die if he used too much at once. If he applied too much chakra at once or in too large an area, he could easily crush an organ. A few minutes later, Naruto completed what he dared to do. He tucked her into the sleeping bag after wrapping the blankets around her. He then placed the sleeping bag between Byako and the fire after picking it up. Byako glanced at the girl next to him who was unconscious. He inquired, "Who is this girl exactly?" "Her name's Hinata Hyuga. She's about as close to royalty as it gets in the Leaf Village. I really never talked to her much back when I was in the village. I always thought she was weird, but I realized a few years back she was just shy around people. I believe she has a sister, but I never met her. I suppose Hinata got over her shyness seeing as she's an Anbu now." Naruto was simply staring at the fire's flames like he remembered events in the past. "What about the one you were fond of?" At that, Byako nodded. "Oh, Sakura. That was just a crush, nothing more. I knew she'd never love me or anything like that. I don't even know if what I felt for her was love in the first place. Maybe it was just the outcast wanting attention. I really don't know." "Outcast? Oh. Well, when I was younger and really up until my funeral I was pretty much ignored by the villagers with very few exceptions. I was rejected by mostly everyone because of old Fox Face. If he hadn't attacked, my mom and dad would still be alive, and everyone would have known from the beginning I was the son of the fourth Hokage." Naruto breathed a sigh of relief and rose. "Some part of me doesn't want to go back to the village. I know, when I get back, there will be those who want me locked up or something like that. I wouldn't worry too much about that, Naruto." Naruto sealed his hand and made more firewood, saying, "I suppose so. What should I do now? I mean, Kumo is probably going to go to war soon if they are sending people like her beyond the border." Byako pondered that for a while. "Well, I suppose they think your village is at its weakest and prime for the pickings. I mean, they lost their deterrent, aka you. Also, they lost the last of the Uchiha. I'm sure that played a part in it as well. So you're basically saying if I show up with a big enough show of force, I might be able to turn them back from really starting a war?" "Yes, that's pretty much what I was going to say. If you can make a big enough show, they will probably think starting a war now would cost them more than what they bargained for and withdraw to begin talks. Well, that's the best case scenario." Naruto made a hand seal and several sticks emerged from the ground, onto which he placed Hinata's clothes to dry. "Yeah, but nothing's going to happen until this storm blows over, which could be at least another day. You should rest, Naruto. You've been up for several days straight debating on whether or not to leave the old sage's home. I'll watch over things while you do." Naruto gave a small yawn. "I guess I really should." Naruto removed the sword from his back and buried it close to the fire. He moved to the cave's left side and took a seat on the floor. He closed his eyes and leaned his back against the cave's rear wall. In a matter of seconds, he was asleep. Byako glanced down at the girl next to him and said, "That boy needs a girlfriend or something." She was very attractive for a human being. Perhaps. At the residence of the sage on his front porch sat the elderly wise man. The little village was not receiving any rain. For some reason, the clouds appeared to circle the village and meet on the opposite side. As he gazed up at the sky, the old sage was contemplating his apprentice. Asami brought 2 cups of tea with her when she left the house. She gave the elderly man a cup of tea and took a seat next to him. Asami hadn't changed in nearly 4 years. "Stop worrying so much. I'm sure Naruto will be just fine." She seemed to be eternal. "I know he'll be fine, it's just that Naruto never understood that he can't save everyone. He'll lose friends and perhaps even his significant other." Her words, "Don't get all doomsday on me now," interrupted him. "Everyone has to learn these things one way or another, you know that." "I know, and when he does he'll probably come back here for the final part of his training." Asami obviously didn't understand why he did what he did. "Why didn't you finish his training?" "Because the last part of his training has a good chance of ending his life." Then there was silence. Sitting there, sipping their tea and gazing into space, they did nothing. Returning to the cave in her sleep, Hinata stirred. It was now very early in the morning, and Naruto had returned Hinata to the cave several hours earlier. Outside the cave, the storm continued to rage. Hinata was beginning to come out of her sleep. Now she felt warm and comfortable. She was back in her own bed and believed that everything that had happened had been a bad dream. Hinata's eyes opened. She discovered that she was in a cave of some kind and not in her room. She was in a sleeping bag, she discovered. Wasn't it orange? It was painful for Hinata to sit up. She held the blanket that was wrapped around her to her chest after realizing she was essentially nude. Ah, so you're awake, I see. The voice came from behind her and was a little deep. She turned to see a big white tiger approaching her from the cave's entrance. Hinata was still unaware that Naruto was with her in the cave. Hinata became aware of her location and realized that everything she had gone through was real. Who are you? Byako took a seat next to the fire and said, I'm Byako, leader of the Tiger Summons. Who saved me? Byako turned to face Naruto and said, the pathetic lump over there who's drooling on himself. Hinata looked over and saw Naruto sitting against the wall. Yes, he was salivating over himself. He appears to be very tall. In actuality, Naruto resembled his father a lot at that time. He even grew out his hair a little more than he had before. Hinata merely grinned while observing Naruto dozing off against the wall. When Byako said, you don't seem very surprised to find out he's alive. With a smile on her face, Hinata reclined. I saw him the day of his funeral. He didn't see me, though. So all this time, you knew he was alive? As a wave of pain swept through her body, Hinata winced and said, I did, but I'm the only one who knows for sure. Byako inquired, how bad is the pain? When she said, not bad, considering they're broken. Not broken anymore. Naruto fixed them as best he could. However, I'm sure he wasn't able to fully heal them. He was never quite that good at the healing arts. He was also the one that took off all of your clothes. Hinata turned a bright red. Did Naruto-kun see me nude? Her mind was replaying that thought over and over. Byako really enjoyed Hinata's reaction. Don't worry. That boy is odd, and took great care not to look at you while he was trying to take off your wet clothes. Although I'm sure he got an eyeful at one point or another. Hinata was blushing profusely. Are my clothes dry yet? Well, it's been several hours since they were hung up to dry. They probably are. However, I would probably ask Naruto later on for one of his spare coats. I'm sure he has one. Oh, and don't worry about Naruto waking. He's a very sound sleeper, as you can tell by the drool. Byako was fond of making fun of Naruto. With the blankets still covering her body, Hinata sat up in the sleeping bag and then got to her feet. She dropped the blanket to the floor and picked up her clothes. Even though Hinata wasn't particularly comfortable, she was unable to wear the blanket while getting dressed. Byako couldn't help but stare at Hinata, even though he wasn't trying. She was pretty for a human. She had flawless skin. Nothing, no scars. As she put on the Anbu flak jacket, Hinata inquired, how's Naruto-kun been? Resilient, said Byako. Though he didn't comment, he observed how affectionately Hinata spoke Naruto's name. Hinata gave a little chuckle. Naruto was that person. Anything could be thrown at him, and he would return for more. For an instant, Hinata merely observed Naruto dozing. He appeared so content at the moment. Hinata approached him, but just as she was ready to touch him, Byako spoke. I wouldn't touch him while he's asleep. Hinata withdrew her hand. Why? She genuinely wanted to know why Byako had said that. Byako kicked a rock with his front paw, sending it flying at Naruto's head. The old man who trained him had a habit of attacking him while he napped. About 6 months after that started happening, Naruto began to react in his sleep to pretty much any form of physical contact. Actually, you just have to get very close to him. Watch. His hand shot up and grabbed the rock just as it was about to beam him in the head. See what I mean? I do. Byako asked a rather arbitrary but insightful question. Why would someone such as yourself live this lifestyle? Hinata was stunning. This was not the kind of life she deserved. She was entitled to happiness. Many reasons beyond my control, was Hinata's somber response. Naruto sat up straight and gave a loud yawn. He got up and stretched. When Naruto rubbed his eyes and saw that Hinata was awake and dressed, he said, oh man, definitely need a better place to sleep next time. He reddened a little. Hey, Hinata. Feeling all right? Hinata reddened a little. I am, thank you. There was an awkward silence between the two as they stood there. That is, until Naruto let out a rather loud growl from his stomach. Naruto grinned broadly and remarked, it seems like I'm hungry already. I hope you're remembered to pack supplies. Naruto dug through his coat and took out scrolls, saying, of course I remembered to pack supplies, Byako. They're somewhere in here. A growing stack of scrolls lay on the ground behind him. No, that's not it. No, not that one either. Nope, that isn't it either. Aha! Naruto exclaimed as he held a scroll bearing the word food. The length of the scroll was roughly double that of a typical one. With haste, Naruto rolled it out onto the floor. Release. There were pots and pans, various meats and vegetables, and fire. Starting tools in a cloud of smoke. It was similar to a survival kit. One problem, kid. You can't cook much of anything other than ramen, and I don't see the ingredients to cook that here. In embarrassment, Naruto's head hung low. It's not my fault, no one really ever taught me how to cook. Hinata said, I can cook, in a quiet voice. Really? Inquired Naruto. Hinata gave a nod. Well, I vote for her to cook. I'm afraid you'll make something inedible out of perfectly good food. You can be so mean sometimes. With a giggle, Hinata started preparing the meal. She planned to make a stew, so she gathered the ingredients she wanted to cook. Naruto had already arrived at the cave's entrance. While Hinata was cooking, he simply gazed out of the cave, watching the storm. As he approached Naruto, Byako inquired, How long were you awake? Since she woke up. Byako smiled. So you got quite the eyeful then, did you? Naruto reddened. Naruto glanced back into the cave and said, I might have. He observed Hinata. As she cooked, she was humming joyfully and wearing a smile. Does she know about what happened to the rest of her team? No, I'm sure she probably understands, seeing as they're not here. Naruto merely observed Hinata cooking, saying, I guess. She appeared content. Compared to the last time he saw her, she appeared to be much less shy. It must have been at least 2 hours before Hinata was done, but Naruto had no idea how much time had gone by. Food's ready, she exclaimed. Hinata picked up 3 bowls and poured her prepared stew into them. Byako and Naruto walked toward the fire. Hinata placed 1 bowl on the ground for Byako and gave another to Naruto. Naruto and Hinata took seats next to each other. Out of the corner of Hinata's eye, she saw Naruto eating the food she had prepared. Praising Hinata's cooking, Naruto cried, This is great. Byako added, Yes, this stew is quite excellent, as a compliment. Hinata flashed a radiant smile. Thank you. Hinata ate her food with joy. She was overjoyed that Naruto enjoyed the food she prepared. Naruto raved, That was a great meal. At least 4 bowls had been consumed by him. Hinata took the bowls and started cleaning them with a water jutsu that was not too strong. So you knew I was alive the entire time, Hinata? You were awake. Then you saw me. Hinata's face flushed bright red, and Naruto's face also blushed slightly. Before she spoke again, there was a rather awkward silence. Why didn't you stay in the village? Couldn't you have become stronger there? A tree appeared from the ground after Naruto made a few hand signals. I had that option to forego what the old man was offering to teach me. That's why he brought me to the village that day. But there were things he could teach me that no one else could.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.